We just got a tweet from the President of the United States. This is what he said. He said, "See you in court. The security of our nation is at stake."
You're listening to The Devil's Advocate, where we talk about news and current events. I'm your host, Mitchell Hernandez.
And I'm also your host, Brandon Condit. Our goal at The Devil's Advocate is to provoke thought by introducing viewpoints and information that isn't readily available in the mainstream media.
It's in truth a conversation where a conservative and independent like myself
And an independent liberal, like myself, can share different points of view without the typical disdain for one another we see all too often in politics and in the media. So, let's begin.
They are mothers, daughters, sisters, fathers, sons, and brothers.
Mr. President.
They are...
Mr. President.
The Majority Leader.
The senators impugn the motives and conduct of our colleague from Alabama as warned by the chair. Senator Warren, quote, said Senator Sessions has used the awesome power of his office to chill the free exercise of the vote by black citizens. I call the senator to order under the provisions of Rule 19.
So, of course, we have a couple of big stories this week. The thing is that the biggest story this week, once again, is the travel ban to those 7 Muslim countries.
Yep. Just keeps getting brought back up, man.
So we're going to go ahead and not start with that this time, so as to not start every single episode on the same
For the
on
next
the same
7
story.
months or so.
Right.
So they figure it out.
Well, don't worry, though. We will address that. Also, I want to quickly say that I'm having a child tomorrow morning. So there's a possibility that there could be a week gap in episodes. We'll
Just
see.
might be.
We'll see
Yeah.
what happens. We'll see how this process goes. But, you know, my first son, my first child, so I know nothing about what's about to happen in the next week. So
You're in for a good time.
yeah, I know. I have a feeling I am. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with the other big news the other big story in the news this week, which was Mitch McConnell telling Elizabeth Warren,
Just shut the hell up.
Shut up. Go sit down.
Puts baby in the corner.
Feminazi. So anyway, so what do you think? I mean, here's what happened. Elizabeth Warren, first of all, the Democrats have been doing every single thing that they possibly can to drag out the process
Right.
of
Who needs to fill government positions, right?
Right.
We don't need those.
Right, yeah. So Donald Trump is having trouble getting his cabinet filled.
Dream cabinet. So good.
They're the best. I promise so much awesomeness.
Besides, that's his voice. She sucks.
It'll make your toothpaste spin. So anyway, so the thing is, Elizabeth Warren, along with all of the other Democrats who have literally, like, for 2 weeks now, they've been getting up, and every time they oppose a cabinet member, which seems to be everyone. And we'll comment on Chuck Schumer in a minute, because I have a
Good.
bone to pick with
Look,
Chuck Schumer.
You're gonna cry for me, cry baby, cry.
But the Elizabeth Warren story is that in staying true to what Democrats have been doing for the last 2.5 weeks, she wants to slow down, like her party does, the process or the time frame in which these cabinet appointees get approved. So Democrats who have no power, all they can really do is hold things up. So they're going to oppose, they're going to question. They've been keeping Congress in session until like
Right.
4 a.m. every night so that Republicans can't sleep.
My problem also is that they say their outcome before they do it. So they're like, we need to get the answers, but I'm definitely voting no. And then they spend like 3 days asking questions. I'm like, you're just being a dick.
Well,
Like,
right. Well,
you already
and-
know what you're voting.
and
Your vote doesn't count.
to
so
to that
that's what
point
you're
too,
pissed
I'm
about.
sure if you ask Chuck Schumer, will these people get approved? He would tell you, yeah. they're going to get approved. Like, we're going to fight it, and
Right.
everything's going to be jaw-dropping and stomach-wrenching and all this stuff. Somebody get that guy some
Yeah,
medicine.
he wakes up in perpetual anguish every day.
Right. he knows and we know that they're all going to get through. And if Betsy DeVos got through, they're all going to get through.
Right.
So,
And Sessions already got through.
Right.
So
So
that did a whole lot.
basically what Elizabeth Warren did was she stood up and she started reading a letter from Loretta Scott King, the widow of Martin Luther King, about Jeff Sessions being appointed. Loretta Scott King wrote a letter 30 plus years ago, when Jeff Sessions was being appointed to a federal judgeship. And
Which he didn't get.
What?
Which he didn't get.
Which he didn't get.
And that was their big claim, is that he's racist.
Right.
And that's why.
So in that she points to accusations of keeping black voters from getting out to the polls in the late 80s, early 90s,
Right.
and all this stuff. So basically, now what's interesting too, and you can judge whether or not her letter is right. I don't know that. First of all, it's an opinion piece. There are some
Right.
legal things that you can look at. When Jeff Sessions was, a federal prosecutor, he prosecuted 3 civil rights leaders for trying to help elderly voters who couldn't get to the polls. What they were trying to help them do was get registered so that they could be absentee ballots, and so
Right.
they prosecuted these 3 civil rights leaders for helping elderly black voters send in absentee ballots. All of those civil rights leaders got acquitted. Nothing came of that case. Everything was dropped because it does sound like a BS case. But based on that, people have attached racist to him.
Right.
And so
Now,
Elizabeth Warren read a story, or read the letter that Loretta Scott King wrote about how Jeff Sessions is racist, and this is how she was trying to stall. This was her stall tactic. So
It's like, instead of reading Green Eggs and Ham, you just read this letter.
Right.
Same thing.
Yeah, essentially. Though this was for an appointee and not shutting down
Just
the
shut
government. So
I want to run the government. I love shutting it down.
Ted Cruz is still a D-bag.
Yes, he is.
But so anyway, halfway through her reading of this letter, because Loretta Scott King accuses Jeff Sessions of being a racist, Mitch McConnell stands up and reads a rule from the Senate, which is basically, and I'm not a journalist, so guess what? I didn't find out what number rule that was. So
811 squiggly line.
right.
So like the Sims money.
But
Whatever
he
the fuck.
basically, there's a rule in the Senate that says that you cannot impugn the motives of your colleagues. So
and you can't paint them or something in a negative light or something.
negative light, which I
Fucking
kind of
bullshit rule, man.
I have an issue with the rule existing in itself. But do you think it was right that he used it?
I think that he has every right to use it. I personally don't. I think that that's free speech. Who cares what she says?
Yeah, no,
You
I
know?
agree with you. Well, and you gave her more of a news story. Like, you gave her more publicity than she
Right.
would have got if she would have just talked and sat down.
Yeah, because of course, I mean, Elizabeth Warren is obnoxious and loud, and I can't stand anything that she does. So of course, as soon as that happened, she went to social media and
Right.
she's doing it, and she's got her angry chipmunk face going on, and it
Well,
was,
remember,
ugh.
the indivisible left was already there. They were already ready. Like, they were watching,
Right.
they were waiting for it to be a story, and that's
Right.
exactly what Mitch McConnell gave her. Now, some could argue, and some have argued, that
The
Mitch
mastermind thing,
Mitch
yeah.
McConnell is extremely calculated, and what he was trying to do was paint her as the face of the Democratic Party, which I don't think, as somebody who, I won't call myself a Democrat, but I will say that I tend to dislike a lot of things that I hear from Republicans more than Democrats, which makes me I voted for Republicans less often, because what they're saying doesn't impress me, whereas what Democrats are saying doesn't really impress me. It just doesn't make me. It just doesn't turn me off as much. So I would say for people like me, though, who I consider myself like the reasonable middle left,
You love Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren is crazy. Elizabeth Warren is
Yeah.
not the face that you want
She's
of
the
that party.
Democratic Donald Trump. I mean, she's a bully. She's obnoxious. She just comes up and attacks people.
Right.
She makes a lot of noise and a lot of fuss. And she doesn't. I don't know. That irritates me. If Democrats want to win, go with Cory Booker. Go with someone who's actually got
I
a
agree.
good thought process and doesn't, just fly off the handle and
I agree.
be crazy.
Now you could call in to question some of Cory Booker's latest stunts.
Van Jones. I'll take Van Jones too.
But I won't take Van Jones.
I like Van Jones, even as a Republican.
Yeah.
I mean, like 25% of the points he make piss me off, and I think they're off the mark. But the rest of it's, I think,
Here's
good.
the thing. I think Van Jones is a very intelligent guy. He's usually pretty reasonable, but he has a show now, and I don't like his
With the
show
Messy
now.
Truth?
Yeah,
I like it.
I don't.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw Poppin' Tops.
Top of the top.
I saw Bill Maher on there the other night and was just like, first of all, I'm not a huge fan of Bill Maher. Bill Maher's kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
But Van Jones wasn't handling him well, and I was just like, man, come on. If you
Van.
can't handle Bill Maher, you
a
can't
white
handle
man.
Ted Cruz. So
Yeah.
that's all I'm saying.
I think that Republicans need to be weary of falling into the same mistakes that the Democrats made, where it was just lining the pins up that you thought were the easiest to knock down,
Mm-hmm.
and then having it completely fly in your face and explode.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they were all saying, is like, oh, yeah, please let it be Donald Trump. Please.
Yeah.
As he defeats 19 people
Well, and
in
I'm
a
sure,
row.
and here's the thing too, as far as Elizabeth Warren is concerned, because I'm sure there are a lot of Republicans, Mitch McConnell included, that would love for Elizabeth Warren to be the face.
But you don't know what's going to happen.
the
All she
left.
has to do is one good moment, and
And-
then she gets all those angry people riled up and along with her.
And I just jokingly poked fun at the indivisible left. But let's talk about the indivisible left, because I like to think, or at least I've thought up until maybe a couple weeks ago, that there are more moderates on both sides than there are extreme.
I would think so.
Okay, maybe not. Here's my argument.
I'm going that it's the more
the
extreme.
Bernie movement was freaking huge, right?
Yeah.
And like it didn't transfer over to Hillary Clinton because it's
She
extremely,
cheated against him?
Well, she cheated against him. It's an extremely more left. Like you
Yeah.
remember through the entire election process, my argument was Bernie's not a Democrat. Like, and Democrats that think that Bernie's a Democrat.
That's why
like,
it's no secret that I was a Bernie guy. Like, even though I'm a Republican, even though I'm a conservative, I liked some of what Bernie Sanders said. I did the first thing initially where I was like, this guy's rainbows and all that. And for a lot of reasons he is. But at the same time, when I started to look at his proposals, they started to make a little bit of sense. They all had to work. And we see how politics is nowadays. If you don't get your way, you're just going to just try to make sure that the other person doesn't get his way either.
Right.
So I think it would have come crashing down, just like, I was very excited for Trump afterwards, after Hillary Clinton just destroyed Bernie,
Right.
just butt fucked him over a barrel, and then he
But
thanked her for
here's
it.
the thing. Those Bernie
He lost a lot of respect in my eyes for that.
that Bernie movement was a very, very amped up movement.
Yeah, but he's lost me now. Like, I'm not going back to him.
Right, I know. But that movement seemed to transfer over to the Women's March in D.C. And
Yeah.
the Women's March in D.C. really, really brought the left together, because what they saw in themselves was, we just brought 3 times the amount of people to the city that Donald Trump brought out yesterday. Maybe
I thought it was 2 times.
Maybe that's what you said.
Alternative facts.
I'm just
Oh
making
my God.
alternative facts. I'm just making stuff up now. I'm not. Look, I always will fall back on, I'm not a journalist. Do your own homework.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean that's fair.
But here's the thing. Like, if those people, if the left is unified into this loud, sometimes violent, shutting
Sometimes
down.
they just killed the Imperial Wizard of the KKK. You hear that? That just happened. Just found his body in the Missouri River. We've
And
seen a lot of.
You know that was an anti-Trump guy? Are you sure?
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it was an anti-KKK guy.
Are you sure?
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying
violence
that
is
guy
on-
didn't
yeah.
necessarily vote for Bernie and wouldn't necessarily vote for Elizabeth Warren. So let's just
No.
keep it at.
Probably voted for Trump. But violence is on the rise. So like,
Violence
yeah,
is on the rise. But what I wonder, and my whole point, and I know that was a long tangent, but my whole point is those people that set Berkeley on fire and those people that
ones
are
that defended it.
shutting down Republicans, much like the Tea Party did, those people are Elizabeth Warren people. So if Mitch McConnell successfully makes her the face of the Democratic Party, that may not be a good thing.
That's my
And
point exactly.
there
Don't
may-
get
and there
excited
may
about lining it
be-
up.
There may be more loud,
I don't think there are.
ruckus liberals than there are people who consider themselves the center left
I
or
still
the
think
reasonable left.
that is the vocal minority of the left.
I hope you're right.
Yeah. So do I. I mean, shit. I would hate to be.
But they keep showing up, and they keep. And I know the Tea Party did too, but this looks different than the Tea
It is
Party.
different because
This
the Tea
looks-
Party was
this looks
consolidated
bigger than
into
the-
just like Capitol Hill type incidents. Like that's what they were for. They were trying to do. They were much more involved in the actual process of legislation. These guys just protest fucking everything. They're just pissed at everything. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't like this. 5 million people showing up to riot your shit.
Right.
So it's different as it's a much larger scale and it's just a broader topic. Like
Right.
it's not focused. And if they get focused, we can have a problem.
Well, they look focused. I don't know. Have you?
I don't think they're focused. They seem to just be protesting everything
Well,
without an actual reason.
Have
They're
you
just-
looked at their plan? Like, have you looked
I haven't.
at?
They don't give me their plan. They don't email it to me.
They
to
do
review.
actually. You can go find it on YouTube. Look up. Oh, I don't.
I'll just join all of Elizabeth Warren.
I'll
and-
put a link to it in the comments, but it's like the indivisible left or something like that's not a joke. That's what they're calling themselves, and it is organized so much better than what the Tea Party was. Like they are literally telling you where.
I'm
what
pretty sure that
streets
the
your
Nazi Party
congressman-
organized, so I'm going to make that parallel, and they're all Nazis.
No, I wouldn't make that parallel because Nazi
Logic seems sound to me, bruh.
jumping to Nazis is never probably the right thing to do.
No, it's not, and I don't think they're Nazis.
Unless-
Strike that from the record.
Yeah, but unless you're talking about Donald Trump. So no, that's a joke. That's a joke. Sometimes my tone doesn't come off as sarcastic.
Right. We don't believe in Nazis. We promise.
We don't. Right. Unless
Unless they're neo-Nazis.
right.
Those
unless
guys
they're
are real.
dead in the Missouri River. That's all I'm saying. So I don't know. Anyway, back to the whole thing that started the tangent of
Right.
Elizabeth Warren's people. Elizabeth Warren got shut down this
Right.
week by Mitch McConnell, which made her a huge story. And what I wonder is, let's not even focus on the fact that she got attention from it. Let's focus on the fact that the rule exists. You think you should be allowed to impugn?
I think
Do you understand why the rule is there? While I don't let
Not
you
in
answer
modern
the first
times.
question I asked you. I
No,
agree.
not in modern times. And I understand it was put in place because there was a lot of fighting that would happen, like actual come to fist during
Right.
the Senate sessions, and then duels, as we've discussed as well.
So that the listener
So-
knows, the point of the rule when it was adopted way back when was so that, in layman's terms, was so that things couldn't get so personal. And
Right.
and it's been kept because you're right. In back in those days, like, people actually dueled. People died over calling each other out in Congress. So, like, I get it. Now, fast forward to modern history, the reason that they would argue that it's still there now is because a lot of these guys can throw rocks at each other when they're talking about healthcare or something, but then they have to turn around and be in the next committee on energy.
Right, creates bad
independence
blood and all
together.
that.
It creates bad blood. If
Who
you're
are we kidding, man?
If you're dropping names.
If to avoid bad blood was the reason this rule was put into place, you have fucking failed because
Right.
there is nothing
Well,
but bad blood right
I don't
now.
think that they didn't really have a good counter rule. They're like, okay, so you can't
say anything mean ever.
well, no, and they didn't even say that. You can say mean stuff. You can't say the congressman's or congresswoman's name, and you can't say Republican or Democratic Party. So a statement that you would not be allowed to say would be something like, I recognize that the Republican from Missouri, Mitchell Hernandez, is a big old D-bag.
No, man. That ain't true.
You couldn't cut off the D-bag part. You still couldn't say that because I broke two rules. I said his party and I said his name. So the alternative, though, is
The good gentleman from Missouri
Is a
sitting
D-bag.
apart from me is a douche.
right, and that's fine. And
Right.
so that's where like I kind of
Much more civil.
the rule itself is kind of ridiculous, and I
I say
wonder.
let them fight, man.
I wonder if Mitch McConnell actually like. I know there's that whole Mitch McConnell's a genius. He's super
I don't buy it.
calculated. I think he was just frustrated. Like,
Yeah.
dude, you guys have been holding this up for 2.5 weeks. Like, no,
Someone
we're-
pointed out the rule book to him, and he was like, here you go. I got
sit
this."
down, sit down, old crazy lady,
Shut up.
pantsuit.
I don't think he had some grand scheme in mind or anything like that. I just don't see it happening.
I don't know. People around him paint him as Frank Underwood. But
That's terrifying. This little turtle coming at you. Come here, boy.
right, meet me in the train station.
That guy, dude. I don't know.
Spoiler alert.
I don't like Mitch McConnell. I don't like any of the leadership. Like, it just seems like every time, if you're like, look, besides Paul Ryan, I still like Paul Ryan
I
quite
still
a
like
bit.
Paul Ryan.
Yeah, because he just wants to crunch the numbers. Like, he's like, come on, guys, let's just
He
do.
wants to walk around.
Let's just do math.
I have a buddy that that works in closely with government up in DC, and he had interned in the Capitol for a little while, maybe a year or two, and he said that Paul Ryan literally walks around the halls of Congress all day with headphones in, and that's not necessarily because anything's playing. He just doesn't like to interact with the people around
That's
him.
antisocial, man.
So the common joke though with Paul Ryan is that he's like blaring Rage Against the Machine in those headphones. Twisted Sister, we're not gonna take it.
Yeah, I like Paul Ryan. He's a fucking dork, but I
He
do
is
like
a
him.
dork, but
He
I
brought
do.
his mom to the campaign trail. I was like, "Here's my mom."
Right.
Like,
I do like
all right,
him,
guy.
though.
There you go.
Yeah, and it's one thing if you're like a Bush and your
Nerd.
mom is known. But he's just like, this is Nancy Ryan.
Here we go.
Who is this? Who
I'm
knows?
always smiling. But yeah, I
So-
like him. But Chuck Schumer pisses me off, which we can get into that in a second. But especially Mitch McConnell, because he is that opposition guy. Like, he's
Yeah.
the guy that the quote comes from is, "We're gonna make Obama a one-term president." And that makes me mad because so many problems have derived from that exact mentality, and now the left is getting it.
Right.
So
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. I'm not a fan of Mitch McConnell. I am not a fan of, I don't know, a lot of the leadership, like you said, it just does. With Chuck Schumer, let's get into Chuck Schumer now.
Yeah,
We teased
let's do
it
it.
twice. Let's get into Chuck Schumer now. Chuck Schumer needs to stop. Like, he's not, first
He's
of
not
all.
gonna stop.
And Republicans, when he first came in, I'm sure congressmen as well as the pundits, but I know a lot of pundits in at least conservative radio were really excited that it was going to be somebody like Chuck Schumer because Chuck Schumer and Donald Trump are friends in real life, were anyway.
right. Well, we
friends
saw
in-
that with Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton.
Right. So
Friends no more.
what they thought was going to happen was that Chuck Schumer was going to be somebody to reach across the aisle and maybe give Donald Trump some Democratic votes, and then that way, like, it's a win-win. Good things, they make compromises, good things
Yeah.
get passed on both
But
sides.
politics is toxic right now.
But
And
politics
then-
is toxic.
And just the leadership, once you
And
get
I
into
would
it.
thank the Tea Party for that. Like, the Tea Party
really did. They
really
started the
poisoned-
escalation. Yeah, they did.
Really
And that
poisoned
was-
the political process.
Yeah, they did. And that was why I was so against, even though being a conservative and Republican, I was still like, quit fucking up. Let the John Boehners and those guys run the show because I felt they knew what they were doing to a degree. Like, there is a large portion of bullshit that goes on from them as well, so it doesn't mean, but still, the Tea Party took it to a different level where opposition was an occupation.
Right.
And that's fucked because that's not your job. Your job is not just to say no. You're supposed to do things better.
Right.
If you don't like it, and if you don't have power, that sucks. You don't have power. Wait a little bit. Try to get it back. Find ways to convert people. That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
So,
But instead, what they're doing, and Chuck Schumer, I think, and I get it, he's the voice, so like he's gonna be the worst because he's the one that gives statements every day. But it's just like for the
him with his
last
weird-shaped head.
the last 3. Well, and he's like that. Who's that cartoon? That like little sad puppy. That's just like
Whoa, droopy face.
right? Or like Deputy Droop.
Deputy Droop.
Like, dude,
I don't know if
stop
that's
it.
right, but I'm gonna say
for the
it is.
last 3 appointees, his 3 quotes were,
Kick my
my stomach is turning over this pick to this department.
Yeah.
My jaw dropped to the floor when this person was was, and then he cried over the other one. It's like, dude, get this guy some antidepressants or something. Like, he
Right.
is a mess. He is totally a mess.
I'm sorry, and I come from a place, and people can say whatever they want about it, but men don't cry on TV. Like, that doesn't fill
John
me.
Boehner.
I know. That doesn't fill me
Glenn
with
Beck.
confidence when the men who are supposed to be leading us start crying. I know
I
it's like,
don't-
oh, don't repress men and whatnot. I don't care. Like,
Any feminist that's listening.
oh, I do not care in the slightest. Like, I don't
is
want to see the man
freaking
following
out
me.
right now.
It's like if you're going into war or something and your commander just starts crying, you're like, whoa, what? I'm
Here's the
following
thing.
this guy?
Okay,
What's
but
happening?
To be fair, Chuck Schumer's not going into war, although
He's
he
going
might
to
feel
political
like
war.
it.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that he missed his calling in dramatic theater.
I don't have a problem with that. Like, I don't have a problem with dudes crying. I have a problem with anyone faking it. Like, don't fake it. When Obama cried
Yeah.
over Sandy Hook, I cried over Sandy Hook. I don't
Well, a lot of people
have,
did.
I don't have a problem with Barack Obama giving his speech and actually having tears. I believe those tears. That was a sad, messed up situation. And when it first, like, it's easy to talk about it now because it's several years later.
Right.
But when
and so
we
many
were
other ones happened as
when
well.
we were living that, and when we were seeing pictures of kindergartners, first graders,
Yeah.
23 of them up on the TV screen on Fox and CNN as the days were passing, like, that was messed up. That was emotional. I was upset. I was very like, what do we
Right.
do to fix this?
That makes sense.
Um,
What did he cry over anyway? Was it the Muslim ban? Travel
Chuck
ban,
Schumer?
sorry. Yeah. Was
I
that
believe,
what he did?
I believe it was. I think it was. And to me,
I mean, I guess people are crying over it, but I don't
well,
I don't agree with that bit. But
I don't agree with the Muslim ban, but I didn't
Travel ban.
cry. Oh, well, we can debate that in a second. But but I didn't. It didn't. And I guess to me, it's because we're all immigrants, but I'm not really an immigrant. Like, I've been here
I'm an
forever.
immigrant 7 generations ago, and I was only
Right.
there for 1 generation. But for some reason, the left wants to say that. I have a big issue with that, and I am going to go off on a tangent here for a second. But being of Hispanic descent, everyone always wants to call me Mexican, and I played into it for a long time because I just thought I was Mexican.
Wall jumper.
I swam, damn it. But no, it's irritating because it's like we've only been there for 1 or 2 generations in Mexico. I'm 3rd generation, American, but somehow I'm Mexican. It's like that's not how it works. Where you're born is where you're from.
Right.
All these people, it's like from Mexico. They weren't there. They
Right.
had to come from someplace else.
Now, I do, on the flip side of that, though.
But
and
it's so obsessive about saying you cannot be American. Like American we're a melting pot. It's like no, if you're born
I
here,
agree with
you're
that.
American.
I did hear an interesting phone call while I'll continue your tangent for a second. Because I listen to a lot of conservative radio throughout the week just to
And I don't, which
just
is-
to hear. I do.
Which is weird. It's like all right.
I'm a really big fan of Brian Kilmeade. He's like one of the only rational conservatives on the radio that's just like that will literally like he will call out both sides,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that.
I
of
find if
him.
you're not listening to Rush Limbaugh, you're probably going to hear some rational conservatives.
You would be surprised at how many aren't.
I don't listen to it, so I probably would be
You
surprised.
would be
Yeah.
especially in like the St. Louis market. Like we have a lot of
Really?
like guys that I'm just like, dude, you don't believe that? You came up with that last night when you heard Sean Hannity say it, and Sean Hannity is a jackass. So
So I throw that football.
right. So anyway, but what was interesting was I heard this call and this lady was talking about how now the call that I heard that triggered her calling in was some black guy had called in on the radio station and
That's racist.
was like, all white people can't see racism. And the host was trying to explain that, like, yes, I can. Just because I haven't been a victim of it doesn't mean that I can't see it. I
Right.
can see it happening. I can have empathy and sympathy for those situations. And the dude was just not having it. And this guy was irrational. And he
Right.
was just like, no, you're white, so you have a privilleged life, and you don't
Yeah,
see
that's a
all this stuff.
common argument
And
that they
while
like to
I will
make.
agree that white privilege does
Which is bullshit.
systematically exist, or it has systematically existed.
In instances, it can exist. I do not believe that just because you are white. I've seen a lot of people that are underprivileged and they are white.
Yeah, I don't think just because you're white
Right.
that you're privileged, but I
think
do
that's a bit of a racist statement to have.
But I do think that, like, if you look at like voter laws, and you look at all these other
Right.
factors,
Well,
like
voter
yes,
laws are-
systematically we have
Voter
we-
laws, and I totally think that there is definitely, like, Republicans are guilty of this 100%, where they have, when people say they've tried to suppress large black populations from being able to register to vote, typically poor. I 100% agree with them. They have. I just don't think it's for racist things. I think it's more political than racist.
Yeah,
they just think that if these guys start to vote, they'll vote against me, and
Right.
so they try to suppress it.
Right.
I'm sure there's some racism that's involved as well, but I think it's a more political
yeah,
thing
I totally
than,
agree.
than that.
Totally
but I
agree.
completely think that it's happening because,
Yeah.
come on, guys. Like, you literally just stopped them from voting
Right.
multiple times.
So, like, no, I agree with you. I think that it does happen, and it is for political reasons.
just
More
like I
so
think Democrats
than
are
it
so
is-
adamant about trying to get them to vote because it helps them.
right politically.
It's a political
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
I agree.
They don't
with
really
you.
give a shit.
So, but here's what was interesting. So this guy calls in. He has his whole thing. He's telling 4 white hosts of the show that they are privileged and they cannot understand racism, and they are trying to have a rational conversation. This is the Dave Glover show. Dave is trying to have a rational conversation with this guy and say, look, like, I can see it. And isn't it kind of racist of you to say that because of my skin color, I can't understand?
Right.
Okay, so we all can make up our own minds on that argument in and of itself. I
Right.
tend to think that Dave is right and that the black caller who called in, while I'll acknowledge that white privilege is existent, it doesn't mean that if you're white you are privileged, and to think that because you are white and privileged that makes you privileged, that in itself is racism.
Right.
And there's no such thing as reverse racism. Racism is
just
racism.
racism.
It's just racism.
No, but yeah, I mean, the common rebut to that is they say, well, it has to be systematic and this, that, so it's only white people. It's like, first off, America's not the only other country that's ever existed. And white people don't have some special monopoly over slavery. That has been happening in almost every
Right.
civilization that we've seen throughout time. Remember the Egyptians?
Right.
Remember those guys? They
Yeah.
love slavery.
Well,
Guess where that's located.
and it's not like
But regardless,
Look,
it happened here.
Yeah,
So-
I don't even want to go down a path of history and
History and
American
racism and
slavery.
Right, I just
but
don't
here's what I will
understand-
say. Here's the point that I'm going to try to wrap up real quick. Is so this lady calls, right, a white Republican Christian lady,
A racist.
She's self-described, all those things. I'm not
Right.
painting her that way.
All right.
And she says, and here's where I laughed, because to prove that she wasn't racist, which I think sometimes make
where
you
you gonna
seem
go?
racist.
Yeah, it definitely does.
She
This is gonna be
goes,
tricky.
I work with black people.
And I don't hate them. I mean, I'm totally...
First of all, she was like, I know 4 black people, and I think when you know the
Oh.
number of the
Yeah.
minority, the number of
You
people,
mean
in that
well, but it's coming off wrong.
it's coming off wrong. So that was a rough start. A few pebbles that she tracked over.
Oops.
Here it gets better. She goes, so we're having a conversation with me and my coworkers, my black coworkers, about white privilege, and they can't understand that just because I'm white, I'm not privileged. So far, so good. Then she goes to justify her non-racism, or at least that's how I took it. I am mixed 172 different ways. Stop right there. Like, it doesn't matter.
I counted.
It doesn't matter where you're going from here, because that just sprinkled on a little bit more doubt on your racism.
Right, it's like,
Like, did you really count? Because
you-
I
You got a tally sheet? I'm not racist. I'm not racist. Come
Right.
on.
She's like, I got a part of Indian, and my great grandma was Irish, and
Right. Conclusion, people like to fuck.
So
Good job.
Right. So here's my thing. Does that make her a racist for saying that? No, it doesn't. Does it make her? Does it put a little bit of doubt in somebody's head? Yeah, it does.
Yeah. You didn't put the topic to rest, I'll say that.
Is that fair? Probably not on both sides, but we
Right.
need to stop being so sensitive about it. And just like the caller before her, who was arguing that just because I'm white means that I'm privileged, step back for a second and try to think. I think what would be really beneficial to everyone individually in society is whatever judgment you just made about the person across from you, put yourself in their shoes. Like,
Right.
Pretend that white is black for a minute and do you see that there's some systematic racism, that your people weren't allowed to vote, that your people weren't allowed to share restaurants and
Right.
buses and drinking fountains until 50 years ago? Like, yeah, it exists, and we can't just write off that it doesn't exist.
Right. It definitely happened. It is history.
Right. So, but I don't think I don't think it gives anybody a pass to say, well, because you fall into this group of people, you also
Right.
fall into the same historical definition, or not definition, but explanation of how we got to this point.
Right.
So,
and the bottom line really is that nowadays there's a lot of racial tension, but you got to do things that'll help, not hinder. And if you just start attacking white people, saying they're all privileged without knowing their story, without
Although-
knowing, you're not going to help.
while I completely
Same thing goes for white
100%
people. They just start attacking, say, oh, whatever.
Oh yeah, Mexicans are the problem. Oh, Muslims are the problem. No, I haven't seen that recently.
I haven't either. So weird.
So, but I don't know. As far as the whole, like, we got way off from Elizabeth Warren. On
Yeah,
that.
we did.
But I think that as far as Elizabeth Warren's story goes, and as far as the other goes, like, both, there's something to be said about how people, whether you're a congresswoman trying to slow down the process in which the government runs, or whether you're a black or white guy looking at the person across from you, maybe just step back for a second and think about what you're doing, because I think a lot of times if people like Elizabeth Warren and people like Chuck Schumer would step back and actually think about what their words are doing, what kind of effects that come from these types of pauses.
Right.
What
Are you having
kind
a good effect or are you having a bad effect?
right. Then you can very much
People are starting to die. Like, there are these instances now where the riots are getting out of hand. Someone was shot at the Milo thing, not at the Berkeley, but the one before that. Obviously, we got KKK guys floating down
Right.
rivers.
And I think
People
just-
are going to start dying,
just-
and calm down,
yeah,
everyone. Like, do
just
we
like-
really want a civil war going on at the same time
Right.
we're doing
And
everything else?
I think it is definitely relatable, because I think that just like black and white or race tensions, I would think it's bigger than black and white, but just like race
Right.
tensions are at an all-time high, so are political tensions.
Yeah.
And people look at my side is the right side, and it doesn't matter what the other side says. There can't be any rational thoughts on the other side. We need to shut the other side down, and that's not healthy. Whether
No.
you're talking about race or whether you're talking about religion or whether you're talking about political affiliations, it's not
Right.
a healthy
And
place
even if
to
Mitch
be.
McConnell was shutting her down just to get on with the process, like, you have to realize that that's going to be viewed as a assault against free speech.
Right.
And even I can't get on board with that. It's like, no, just let her
Yeah.
talk. She's dumb. Just
Yeah,
let her say
well,
her dumb
and
shit, and then
if,
we'll
you
say,
know,
hey, that's
And
stupid.
the devil's advocate isn't having this conversation if he doesn't pull that rule, because she would have got up, she would have read all her stuff, and you and I would have seen it in the news and been like, oh, it's just Elizabeth Warren being dumb
Doing dumb.
Elizabeth Warren again.
Yep.
And we wouldn't have thought about it. But because she got shut down, now it's a thing. And now she's gotten way more notoriety from it than she was popular anyway amongst the people that she's popular with.
Right.
But people that don't like to talk about her, like me and you, wouldn't have been talking about her today if that didn't happen. So I think it's just a good lesson that everybody calm it down and really think about your actions, because we have a new administration in front of us.
Yes, we do.
have so things are gonna change, and I don't think that if I don't have a problem with the Democrats playing opposition if they're stopping something bad. That's obviously opinionated, and so you have to weigh the pros and cons.
Right.
But I don't think that shutting things down just to shut them down is any better than what Republicans did
No.
during 8 years of
Looking at
Barack
you, Ted
Obama.
Cruz. Like, what did you get accomplished again?
Right,
Nothing.
nothing.
A lot of furloughs.
Right, a lot of green eggs and ham sales probably went through the roof.
Right. Woohoo.
But
Good job, bud.
I don't know. I think it would be good for everybody to just kind of
I
calm
think we
it
agree
down.
on that one.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So back in the news, once again.
Every
Travel
week.
ban. Yep, it's gonna be for a while now. This is round 3 of us talking about it.
Yep.
Um,
Out of 4 episodes.
I know. Yeah, pretty much. But so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna give a real quick timeline of it so that we have all the facts going into it, and then we can kind of make predictions and see where we're gonna go with it.
Gotcha.
So if anyone doesn't know, at this point, Trump issued an executive order banning travel from 7 countries for 90 days. It also bars refugees admissions for 120 days. This was met with mass protest from the left. A federal judge, Ann Donnelly of New York, blocked part of the executive order. Then federal judge from Massachusetts, Allison Burroughs, blocked a part of the order. Senate Republicans tried to introduce 2 bills, which they would debate to rescind the order, but Republicans blocked that. And then Trump went ahead and
Republicans
fired.
blocked that?
Republicans blocked it from being even brought up
Gotcha.
to the floor. And then, of course, Trump followed Attorney General Sally Yates. Trump then did allow expedited clearance for green card holders, which was the first real kind of win for Democrats on the issue. Federal Massachusetts judge Nathaniel Gordon did not extend the temporary restraining order, overturning the block by Allison Burroughs, which was the first court win for Trump. Then Judge James Robar blocked the ban nationwide. So that was the big one.
Right. That was last week's.
Right. And then, Federal Appeals Court denied Trump's request to resume the ban, taking it to the 9th District Court, who had both sides make their cases. It was a 3-judge panel who then went to rule against reinstating the ban.
In a 3-0 decision.
Yep. Then D. Trump said, "Well, I'll just probably write a brand new order." But at the same time, an anonymous judge from the 9th Circuit Court has asked the other 25 judges to do a vote to hear the cases again, in which case it'll go to an 11-member panel rather than just the 3, and we could get a new ruling on it. It's called an in-box session. The main issue that seems to be tripping Trump up is the travel ban, not the refugee ban. So that's where we're at right now. Yeah. I think that if Trump is smart, he's going to separate it, just issue a different executive order banning the refugees, because no one seems to have a problem with that. That seems to be well within his authority to do so. Get that out of the way, and then reword your thing a little bit.
I wouldn't say nobody has a problem with that.
Well, obviously people do,
I
but
bet
no
you
one can shut it down, really.
Right. I bet you. Yeah. There's a lot of people that have a problem with it, but legally, it can't. That part can't be stopped.
Right.
So,
Well, I thought he had a pretty solid standing on the first part, but apparently all the judges are saying not so much.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think their issue with it has been that he can't provide adequate proof that we need it. And
we don't need it. Do you think we need it?
I said yes, I do think we need it.
You think we need it? You think it's as necessary?
I think that it could, just because we're not getting attacked at the moment, the world is primed for war. These things are happening. All of these other countries are dealing with these problems. Our oceans can only insulate us for so long. And in history, we see that time and time again, where we think this will protect us, so we don't need to protect ourselves further. And then it happens. If ISIS wasn't around, I don't think we would need this. And I don't think we would be doing this. But ISIS is around.
I
And
think
until we can get rid of them.
We would be doing this whether or not ISIS was around. We would be doing this because Al-Qaeda would be around, Boko Haram would be around.
Yeah, but they're not stealing anyone from the U.S. You know, we've seen ISIS-inspired
Stop
attacks
putting people
on
in the U.S.
U.S.
in their countries.
soil. What?
They're not stealing anybody from here.
No, they're not.
So they're, look, the fact of the matter is, travel ban, it is not necessary. You pretend these oceans are lakes, and they're not lakes.
I'm saying there's a lot of countries that used to be third world that are becoming first world countries, and they can get around our oceans.
The fact of the matter is, we don't have a terrorism problem in the United States, and when we do have it, is from people who are already here.
But we have a terrorism problem in the world.
We have a
and
terrorism
that's the
problem
point.
in the world, but we obviously have a process set up that's working well enough that we don't have.
It
one
worked well enough in
United
the
States.
past, but who's to say it's going to work in the future? And all they're saying is, let's take 90 days to reassess the programs and see if they're adequate.
So what we're saying though is, let's clamp down an iron fist on a problem that's non-existent, that we already have under.
If we see
under
it coming
wraps.
off in the distance, just because it hasn't happened in 12 years,
we
or
don't
whatever
see
you
it
want to say.
We don't see it coming. We see it coming to countries with that terrorism can walk to.
Well, obviously, yeah, it's much easier. They don't have
Right.
you know, the
So
oceans
we don't
to
see it
block
here.
them.
So our oceans do go into a big
Yeah.
are a big part of our security, right? Like they
Yeah,
are. We're
Mexico and Canada ain't attacking us.
right. So we're surrounded by countries that aren't attacking us and water.
Obviously,
that will keep-
homegrown terrorism is the main threat to
which you're
America.
not going to stop with a refugee
No, you're
ban
not. This
or a
isn't
travel
designed.
ban.
This isn't designed to stop homegrown terrorism with these
Well,
inspirational
maybe
attacks.
since homegrown terrorism is the only terrorism we have an issue with, we should
At the
focus
moment.
on that.
Well, yeah, but what can you do about that? Limit everyone's internet access? You can't do that.
Well, I agree with you.
Right.
But
You just have to hope.
all we're
that-
doing is instituting a feel-good measure that only makes half of the people in the country feel good, and it does nothing for any of the people in the country.
I don't see it like that at all.
I think
that
facts see it like that. I think statistics see it like
yeah, like
that.
I said, there haven't been attacks yet, so
Right.
it's real easy.
So
I bet
let's-
the day before World War One or World War II, the French were like, "We're cool. Our army's totally good. We're definitely not going to lose in 1 week to the Germans. They can't cross the Ardennes. Who can get through there with tanks? It's impossible." Guess what? It was, and they got through.
Yeah, guess
and
what?
then they were done within a week.
there wasn't an ocean between them.
No, there wasn't.
No,
but
there
it's the same
wasn't.
equivalency. It's
It
saying
is
this
not
will
the same
protect us.
equivalency at all.
There are different methods that they can get in, and obviously they are working with these other countries. We see North Korea just testing more missiles. Recently, they're within the next 4 years, they're gonna be able to reach us.
North Korea?
North Korea,
Okay.
that's gonna be a situation that we're gonna have to deal with. And who are they in cahoots with? All these people from these countries. With China, obviously, is a
The
big
same people that Russia is in cahoots with?
right.
Okay. We
Yeah.
should be friends with them.
Well, we shouldn't be attacking, having them attack us too. We can go on and on about the war. I think that the world is primed for war, and right now we would be on the losing side, in my opinion. We have a very good army,
We will, I think.
but
that
our
we will-
allies don't.
We will be.
Every one of our allies just doesn't spend any money on their militaries. They've come from the point of view that World War II was the war to end all
So
wars.
w- so-
It's not going to happen.
So then we'll solve that by teaming up with the one guy that would love nothing else than America to fall off the face of the
I don't
map.
see, I don't see it that way. I think Russia wants to do what's best for Russia, but the Americans and Russia can help each other out quite a bit. And if we can convey that to Putin and show that having us as both as allies can help each other out, like I said, I want him to commit to taking out ISIS jointly with the United States. Boots on the ground, the whole deal. That's what I would like to see happen. Then I would think that we both have sufficient skin in the game. I don't want to see them just release sanctions from Russia for no damn reason, because that
Well,
doesn't
now
help
they're getting
us.
Edward Snowden back, so maybe that's a reason to
Yeah.
lift sanctions.
Is he going to...
I don't know. Russia said, "Hey, we'll give him back if you want him back."
Oh, shit.
To Donald Trump.
Well, that
A-
sucks for Edward Snowden.
as a
Maybe you
show-
shouldn't have gone to those
as
two
a show
countries.
Well, yeah, right. Donald Trump's policy on leaks is like this guy will be
It's totally fine.
teaching college classes in a week. Like he'll be fine. So they're not going to do anything with him.
Right.
Even after Donald Trump disagreed with Bradley Manning, Chelsea Manning, being
Right.
released from jail. I don't see Edward Snowden going to jail, and I don't
No.
see a relationship with Russia being a good thing. I think
I
that
see it,
you're
the
not-
potential for it being
I
a
think
good
you're
thing.
giving Putin credit for being more honest than he actually is.
Well, none of our
Uh,
allies have ever, none of the allies that have ever mattered have truly been honest, if you want to put it that way. Like they're all,
matter is a perspective
Yeah.
thing.
and especially
You
during
would say
times
that
of
our
war.
alliance with Germany probably doesn't matter. I would disagree.
I think
with
it
you.
matters. Yeah, it totally matters. I mean, everyone there, obviously, the European Union is giant
Mm-hmm.
economically, and they're, basically one of the best countries off in the European Union, or at least they were. I know they're not doing as well now.
Right.
And we'll see. We'll see what happens with that whole election coming up and how the world changes. But the world, I'm glad to say that Europe is becoming more conservative. So we're starting to get people that are already our allies that are starting to see the world in the way that we see
it makes more sense for Europe to be more conservative because Europe has a problem. It
I
doesn't.
don't understand the mentality that the left has that we've watched this country all do these measures and have it blow up in their face, but it'll be totally different for us. I don't get that mentality.
No, it's not. Well, it will be different for us because they don't have the same things. We're not playing on the same field, right? Like, they don't have a big ocean between them. We have that on our field. That's a really good asset to have.
It's a decent asset. It's not going to save
we have
everything.
a 3-year vetting process as is, which is
Right.
why we don't have a.
Well, here's
which
the
is why
problem we
don't-
have. It's so easy
If
to
I don't
just
have
say-
diabetes, should I never eat sugar ever? Like, no, I think that you
They should.
can.
They would. Actually,
You
doctors
should
are going to tell you to probably not eat so much sugar and whatnot, so
I
that
know
you
they're
don't
gonna
get
tell you
diabetes in the future.
not to eat so much sugar. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is they're not going to tell you not to have a grain of sugar. What they're going to tell you
Right.
is to watch your sugar, vet your sugar.
For 3 years, you watch that candy bar
Right.
until
And
it gets
then-
good enough for your system.
Right. And
No.
then you allow it in.
No, and that's the thing is that we're not saying that. We're not saying indefinitely. We're saying for 90 days, let's stop things, put a halt, take a look at the. I think the new administration should be able to look at the process
So,
and say, is this adequate? I know
let's-
that you like to say that it's adequate.
So let's say this. If the Democrats are able to keep this fight going for 90 days,
Right.
shouldn't you be looking at this? Right? What's stopping you from looking at it now? You don't need
Right.
a halt to look at it.
No,
look
you
at it.
you don't. Well, I mean, there's protocol
Okay.
in place. So if there's a hole in the protocol, then
So then you're saying that essentially you agree you don't need to halt this to assess
I would
it.
think you don't need to halt it to assess it, but at the same time, if there was a hole in the protocol, you wouldn't be safeguarded against it for the next 90 days.
No, you wouldn't, but you won't be after
Well, it
the
depends
90
on if they
days.
find it and they fix it. I don't know.
If they find it, if they fix it.
Right.
If they don't find it, then you're back to square one, and this whole thing was pointless.
Yeah, it was. Well, at least we would have checked through it, and that's the thing. So I don't.
Do your checking.
Yeah,
Don't-
and I've
don't
I've
put
said
up your
before,
walls.
I
Like
don't
that-
agree with the necessity for this travel ban. I don't agree with it. I just don't think that it's my place to say whether we do or don't. I think the administration should be able to take a look at it. They're not, you know what I mean? They're not doing anything.
You're not
that's-
buying into that whole Donald Trump statement that, like, oh, it's been a week and a half, and I've seen some papers, and oh my God, terrorism
No,
is
even
like
though,
rampant
yeah,
through the
even though
United
I
States.
voted for,
You don't know what I know, so just trust me. No,
even though I voted for Donald Trump, and I do think that he can do a lot of good for the country, I'm not in any habit of trusting him. I mean, the dude lies 50% of the time, so I'm not gonna just take
fake
it on
news.
face
Fake
value.
news. Mitch is full of fake news.
I'm full of fake news, except for this, which was totally wrong, but I'm gonna say it's right. Yeah, so he's kind of lost me on that aspect because guess what? You've just spent 3 weeks lying.
Right.
Maybe don't do that, and I'll trust you a little bit more.
Right.
So I don't take it on face value, but I do think because I look at the rest of the world and I see these other attacks that terrorism is an issue.
So do you think that as far as the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals goes, do you think that they came to the right conclusion? Because they're
According to what happened in the court, I would say yes.
the reasoning
Grudgingly, because apparently they said that the lawyers that were arguing for the ban just could not come up with an argument. They
Right.
couldn't come up with a compelling reason to do it. And to me, and like I said, it's easy because they want facts and statistics on what hasn't happened yet. You can't do that. So when you try
you
to,
can't just inevitably, or you can't just
this is a precautionary measure. Yeah, I mean,
you can't
By
infinitely
definition, there are no
say
stats on it.
Something is going to, like, all you're doing is fear mongering. You realize that something might happen sometime,
But
someday,
there's
some
actually
way,
there's actually something
somewhere
you're afraid
in the
of. We're not
world.
saying like, hey, you know
Look,
what? I think that I don't know, the Swedish might actually attack us when there's literally no precursor
Someday
for
somebody
that.
might kick in my apartment door and
I'm
run
gonna do
in
it, and then I'm gonna prove you wrong. You should have
shooting bullets everywhere, like just spraying the walls.
Right, but we do have a terrorism problem.
well,
that's diluting the actual
Here's the thing, though.
threat,
I'm
and
not. I'm not buying ADT because no one's after me.
Well, we also live in Missouri, so not only do we have oceans, but we're in the damn center of the country.
We got
so-
guns.
and we got guns. We will kill you.
So
I don't have a gun. Shit, I gotta go buy one.
No, I just don't. I just do not. I don't see the point in the ban. I do think that I agree with you that as far as what the Ninth Circuit was looking at last week, I think they came to the right conclusion.
Right. I'd like to see an 11 panel. I want to see it do the MBOC, session and see what they come up with and,
I
and
wouldn't
see if they
mind-
make different arguments. Like fire those guys. I've seen a lot of, lawyers that come in and we think they have an ironclad case and they just fuck
Here's
it
what's going to
up.
be hilarious, though, is that Neil Gorsuch eventually, probably in May, will get appointed to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
And what would be hilarious is if this is still going on, and Neil Gorsuch goes the Justice Roberts route and just goes against Donald Trump and just smacks him in the face.
Yep.
Which I could see that happening because
you never know where
because
they're gonna go.
dude, while he is super conservative, definitely an Antonin Scalia.
And I'm conservative, and I
seems
don't agree with
reasonable
the
at points at
yeah.
times.
I don't
So-
agree 100% with the travel ban. I know it probably comes off that I do. I understand why someone else might, and especially the president, who it's his job
But
to
I
keep us
think-
safe.
I think the-
I could see why he might think this is the best course of action. I personally don't think so.
I think
but
it is a disservice to
you
call
and your
it-
phone again.
to call it a Muslim ban.
All right, we're back.
All right, I apologize for that. So again, like we stated at the top of the show, I'm having a baby, so my phone's not on silent today.
No.
And
There might be a break or two.
When she calls me, I'm going to go, oh God, hopefully she's not in labor. It's not time. So
You got 12 hours, son.
So yeah, I do. I really do. We're really going in at 7:00 tomorrow morning.
Babies are easy. Don't even worry about
Oh
it.
yeah, no problem. Don't think about it.
I've had
Um,
one. Listen to everything I say.
yeah. So if there's any more ridiculous interruptions in the show that obviously seemed like they were edited horribly, that's because they weren't edited. They were
No.
stopped and then restarted. So anyway, my point basically is that Mitch is wrong about everything. I just like I don't know. So let's go back into the Ninth Circuit. I do think that here's what I would think.
Bunch of liberals.
I think that even with an 11 panel or 11
It is-
judge panel,
yeah.
it's a liberal court and it'll probably go the same way.
I would be interested.
It may not go 11-0.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to note that this guy who brought it to a vote or suggested the vote stayed anonymous, so he didn't even feel comfortable coming and putting his name up forward
Well, right.
to his own colleagues or whatnot and everything.
I would, yeah, but I would say that's more to the American public than it is to the
Yeah.
to his colleagues, because people are acting crazy right now.
They are.
And so I wouldn't want to put my name out for it or
That's why we made a
against it.
podcast. That was smart.
Right. So, but the thing is, I don't have any influence in the decision. So
Right.
I can tell you that all you people that are for this ban, you're just trying to hug yourself with arms made of walls. And I don't
Proverbial
agree.
walls.
I don't agree with the reasoning.
I don't per se agree with this reasoning, but I also understand that I'm an asshole that doesn't have all the facts, and that
I
there
have
is
all the facts. Just listen to me.
there is a lot of terrorism in the world right now because there are these terrorist organizations that, for whatever fucking reason, we decided not to put a stop to.
Right.
And so now we're dealing with them at a much more involved scale than we would have had to if we just would have gone in and taken care of it.
Yeah. No.
I still
mean,
think we need to go in and take care of it because we've just given it away. We gave it to Russia. We gave it to
I agree that
Bashar al-Assad. No one, Republican or Democrat, wanted Bashar al-Assad to still be in power.
No.
Like, we all agreed on that. And by doing what we did, that's what we have. Not only do we have Bashar al-Assad, but we have a Russian-backed Bashar al-Assad who is still supposed to be our ally. Even
you
under
think-
the Democrats,
All
he
right.
was supposed to be our
So
ally.
let's say in a perfect world, like the Russian-United States relationship does work out. Putin and Trump are actually going to work together and all this stuff, and we
Golden
do.
shower's gonna bring us together,
and,
man.
And let's say that you get your wish, and the two teams join up and take out ISIS and more or less eradicate ISIS.
Right.
All right, let me bring you to a new question. At that point that all of that is done and we're friends with Russia and ISIS is gone, can we still go back into Syria and get rid of Bashar al-Assad?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, we bought him. With our inactivity, we have bought Bashar al-Assad. That is, he's not going anywhere.
So if he goes somewhere, do you think ISIS would come back?
No, I don't think so. I don't think, because Bashar al-Assad has nothing to do with ISIS, really.
Right.
You know, he just was killing his own people. They tried doing their own revolution to get him out of power. It didn't work out.
Yeah, what's crazy is, and the reason I asked that question is because there's a story that came out this week about some of the goings on under Assad, and like obviously horror stories. We all know a lot of them, but this one really, really kind of made me go, damn. like, this guy is the epitome of, like, worse than Saddam Hussein, probably worse than
Yeah.
Gaddafi.
I mean, they're all bad guys.
They're all bad guys, but, like, the story that came out this week was that, so he'd take these political prisoners, right? People that spoke out against
The rebels.
the rebels, right? But he would take, but he would take guys and their family members that, like, were not involved in violence, were not involved in protests. They just were on the opposite side, right? And so he would take them and imprison them, and then in the middle of the night, the prisoners or the prison guards would come down and take 500 people at a time, and tell them that they were going to be medically examined. Right? They would take them into the basement of this prison where they would sit in front of a military judge, and they would all be sentenced to death. They would
Tried
all
for
be
treason.
they would all be hanged together and then shipped to local government-run hospitals where the coroner would pronounce them dead from fume inhalation or like heart failure.
That's
or,
pretty fucked
or
up.
stuff like this. And so what I wonder is, in that nice Republican scenario where Russia and the United States are playing on the same side, to benefit each other, is it still okay to go in and take out Assad? Because Assad's a bad guy. Whether
he's a bad guy.
Whether we're
Again, I still say we bought him, and if we do want to take him out later, it comes at the risk of alienating the Russians and a few other people. I think that, because I didn't think that we should have backed Bashar al-Assad, obviously, but I don't think we should have backed the rebels. It should have been us. We should have gone in and said, we're the power here.
Well,
we're ousting him.
You and I had that. I mean, that was one prediction that I made 6 years ago. It was like, why don't we just go in and
Just
stop
arm the
this?
rebels.
Well, yeah, we got to that point, but I don't think, like, we could.
I never wanted to arm the rebels. I didn't think that was a good idea, because who the fuck are these
No,
guys?
but we
And it's
could have
just-
gone in with the Air Force, and we could have blown up their.
We needed a base, because we did do that. We did the drone strikes, and Obama, was killing people all over the place, because that's just what happens in war. Whenever you're not 100% right, we see what happens with that. But without having that intel, without having a base, soldiers on the ground, people that can collaborate with everyone else to try to take these guys out, it was all for naught. I mean, we basically said, well, it's their fight; they should be doing it.
Right.
And I understand that, but at the same time, we knew they weren't up for the task. It was obvious that these guys weren't going to get the job done.
So
All it took was for Russia to come in and say, we're going to come in and throw our clout around. We're not backing the rebels, because duh. So
Right.
we're going to back Bashar al-Assad and just end the conflict. And that's what they've done. And Putin is just so popular in Russia right now because of that, because he's showing power. He's making Russia great again.
Right.
He's restoring it to its former glory, at least in their eyes. It's not the path that we would take.
No, and it's the path that we're going to look. I don't think it turns out good for us. I don't think Russia can be the former Russia if the United States.
Yeah, we really got to square off. Are we okay with not being a superpower? And this is something that Mitt Romney argued in his
Well,
book.
we're gonna not be a superpower either way. But
Well, we need to be, is my argument.
I'd rather it be China than Russia.
I don't want China either. These guys China is the worst country for environmental rights, workers' rights. These guys don't give a fuck. All they care about is trying to make China even.
What they don't do that Russia does, and apparently the United States, according to Donald Trump, is poison their political enemies.
Hey, dude, Beijing and whatnot is in Hong Kong. They are messed up. Those guys do go missing, and their political
Hong Kong's
opponents.
not. Well, Hong Kong is part of China.
Yeah.
That Donald Trump reluctantly admitted this week.
One China policy. But yeah, don't think that
It's
China's
weird
any
too
different.
that, speaking of things that Donald Trump has already flip-flopped on, NATO's okay now. All of a sudden, NATO's great.
Well, we have Nikki Haley in there. Or no, it's just in the UN. I don't know.
Unbelievable.
Like the NATO is, yeah.
Republicans, be ready to be let down by Donald Trump.
We already have been. I mean, that's just the common course, because I don't think Trump realized that the president doesn't have all the damn power in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he's going to have to get used to that idea that there are checks and balances. People do stop you in different forms and in different ways. They have different methods of doing so.
Right. And I'll say, as far as, this topic goes, the Muslim ban, which it is, and let's not call it a travel ban
It's
anymore.
not a Muslim
because
ban.
when you tell
I will not
when
give you that
tell,
point ever.
Well, when you tell Christians in Iraq that they're allowed to come in, but Muslims aren't, it becomes a Muslim ban,
No, it's
not a
persecuted-
travel
It's a
ban.
persecuted group. We've
Oh
done
yeah,
the
because
exact same
Muslims
thing for
aren't being
Muslims.
persecuted in the Middle East.
Yes, they are, but it's
Yes, they are.
But it's much more difficult to discern from Christians because Christians
they're
are being
brown?
attacked. No, because everyone there is Muslim. That's like coming in. If there was a
So if everybody there is Muslim, so much
Not
so
everyone
that
there, obviously,
so if the majority of people are Muslim, so much so that
Yeah.
it's hard to discern them. How do you discern a Christian? Because they're white?
no, because they claim that they're a Christian. and
Okay,
they go to
so
these
then if
Christian
it's
groups.
as easy if being part of a religion
Are
is
you-
as easy as claiming
Are
that
you
you're part
denouncing
of a
that
religion.
Christians are being persecuted in these states?
No,
Do you
I'm-
think that's not happening?
No, are you discounting that Muslims are being persecuted in these states more?
Of course they are, because it's a civil war within their own area. They're trying to wipe out the
Okay,
moderate Muslims.
so when good Muslims
It's not a Muslim ban though, because obviously, if it was a Muslim ban, then all countries of Muslim origin and majority Muslim
is a
would
Muslim
be
ban
banned.
from those countries in the list.
It's a travel ban from those countries. They happen
Unless
to be
you're a
majority
Christian.
Muslim. Yeah, because then you're getting
Okay,
persecuted.
so it
and we
is a
use
Muslim
It's
ban
the same thing that we've
was
done.
put on those countries.
No, it is not.
If you're a Christian, you can travel here.
No, you're going to be vetted, but we're going to have an expedited way to get you back in because you're being a persecuted
So
group.
you have to be vetted, only we're going to loosen the rules on our vetting if you're a Christian.
because there aren't a lot of radical Christians
well,
right
then
now,
if I'm
especially from these
then
areas.
if
We
I'm
have
a
radical
crazy
Islamists
if I'm
from
a
this
crazy
area.
Islamist from Somalia, I'm just claiming Christianity.
Yeah, that they probably will try to do that, and that's why hopefully we'll vet them and get them out. But we do
So
need to
then
try
you
to
would
take
think
the
then
extended
that
measures
we
to try to
need
get them
a
through.
3-year vetting process for Christians as well.
I would think. Well, it depends. If we need to look at them, I think 3 years alone is a little bit too long, depending on it. I know that
Whether you're Muslim or Christian.
whether you're Muslim or not, 3 years seems excessive unless you're really going to go through. I don't know what their process is, and I don't know how they do it.
Okay.
Regardless, Christians are being persecuted. That is actually happening, and
So are
just like
Muslims.
every other, well, not to the same extent, and
To a bigger extent.
no, because it's different.
Statistically.
It's within itself. It's contained within itself. So if it's a Christian that's being persecuted, which they are, obviously,
So
we can try to
if-
get that away. But the Muslims that are being persecuted oftentimes have ties. They have family members that are also intermingled. Let's say you have an
All right,
uncle or
so
something
let's-
that is joining
let's
this
just
group.
flip-
You
let's
got to
just-
be a little bit
let's
more
just flip
stringent
this.
on them.
If Protestants and Catholics are killing each other in Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
should one side be? What should the vetting process be for Protestants?
It depends on what the
and
majority
Catholics?
is. If there was the majority Catholic,
But Muslims should have an easier go of things.
what do you mean?
Muslim refugees fleeing
From that fight, yeah. Because
Yeah?
they're not
You
part of the
think so?
they're not part of the conflict there. They're not instigating the conflict. They're not the ones that are perpetuating it.
I think anybody, personally, I think that anybody who's not part of that conflict should be
Can you agree
treated
with me?
the
It's a
same
little
way.
bit harder to discern if you're from, because this is radical Islamists that we're dealing with. It's a little bit harder to discern if you're Islamic
If you-
from Christian
if you're
you're
com-
part of that
if-
organization.
I will agree that if you're coming from a Western point of view, yes, because Western people see brown people and see brown people.
We don't
I
see
think-
brown people.
I
It just
think
so
that
happens that
when-
the conflict right
I
now
think that-
involves brown
here's
people.
the thing that I think. I think that if somebody in the Donald Trump administration or if somebody in the government that is put in control of making these checks on these people,
Mm-hmm.
if you see a white guy show up at the gate, you assume that he's a Christian. If you see a brown guy, you assume that he's a Muslim. Are there any brown Christians in the Middle East?
I'm sure there are. Mm-hmm.
Probably so. Do they get treated the same way as the white
that's why you
Christians
have
in
to
the Middle
vet
East?
them.
You do have to vet them. Nobody's disagreeing
you
that
can
you
come
have
up
to
with
vet them.
whatever your bias is when you first see them coming to the gate. That's one thing.
So you think that if I claim Christianity,
I would
I
want
should be
everyone to
vetted
be vetted.
easier?
What's that?
If I claim Christianity, I should be vetted easier.
No, I do think when you're coming from this area, which has radical Islamic ties, that you're probably not as a big of a suspect as being part of that group if you're Christian. That makes sense because it's not radical Christians
But-
doing it.
Right, but we both acknowledge that Christians don't all come in the same
No, they
shape
don't. That's why you
and
vet them.
size. Right. So if I claim Christianity, no matter
Mm-hmm.
what I look like, the vetting process should be easier than if I claim Islam.
Not necessarily. It should be expedited. It should take priority because you want to get those people out quickly because they are the ones
Well,
that
if
are...
I'm a terrorist, just claim Christianity.
Well, then you get vetted, and then we say, well, Mr. Dude, you've got like 800 relatives that are in this thing. Oh, trust me, I'm different. not good enough, you don't get to come in. Or we come in and say, oh, Mr. Christian, what do you do? I love Jesus. He's real cool. And then they go, okay, you don't have any other ties to it. Your families are fine. Expedite, go
So
through.
then let's use another scenario. If the Phelps
I'm coming to think that you just hate Christians.
No, I don't hate Christians. It's not about that. I'm trying to show that you're only considering one side of the argument.
No, I don't think I am.
And I'm trying to show that if you say that it's a travel ban, then
Which it is.
then it is a travel ban for everybody from that region.
And it is, isn't it?
No, it's
They just
not.
get expedited reviews on their on the vetting process, so they still can't come in until they get vetted. Therefore, it is still a travel ban from this area.
As long as they're all getting vetted under the same process, okay.
They are
that's
getting
fine.
vetted, but they get expedited because they're a persecuted group, and we would do the same for any other persecuted
Well, then
group. We have done
I'm
the same
calling
thing.
for all refugees who are not bad guys to claim Christianity.
Go for it, convert. If they don't really care that much, then just go.
You don't
for
need to
it.
convert. All you have to do is say that you're a Christian.
Well, then they're gonna look back and say, "What's all this Quran doing in your house and whatnot?"
Okay, well then it is.
I just really like it.
Then
you
it
know?
is a Muslim ban.
No, it's not.
My mom was raised me Catholic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure that there is Catholic stuff around my house.
Right.
I'm not a Catholic.
Well, I'm not either, really.
I'm not in anything. So if I said to somebody that I'm not a Catholic, could you come find a rosary or a scapular in my
Yeah.
house and say,
And if
"Oh,
it-
yes, you are"?
And if it was a radical Catholic problem, could you see why we would want to vet you a little bit harder when you saying that you do not have any ties to Catholicism and then finding these objects around you or in the vetting process?
But I'm a good guy, right? Like
yeah, you might be saying that, but
No, I'm telling you, in the scenario, I am an actual good guy. Okay? So just because I have a scapular somewhere in a box doesn't mean that I have done anything wrong.
Mm-hmm. No.
And just because I have Catholic douchebag family members that may have done something wrong still doesn't make me a bad person.
No.
So you are assigning me as you are putting me in that same group with those Catholic extremists now
Right.
because of a scapular.
because there's ties
So-
to it.
so-
You don't see the point there?
So
You don't
you're
see
making a religious judgment.
Well, let's be honest.
So it's a
If it was-
Muslim ban.
No, if it was actual Christians that were attacking and then you were tied to these things, I would say maybe hold off on there. That's the point. And the thing is that it's not all Muslims. It's from these areas. That's why the other Muslim countries don't have the ban.
No.
It makes no sense.
Saudi Arabia should have a ban.
They should, but that's never going to happen. We
UAE
have
should
too
have
many-
a ban.
we have way
Qatar should
too
have a
much-
ban.
That's great. Okay, that's you saying
So if you
that.
put money into us, then you know we'll also
goes both ways, man.
We'll also bend the rules.
Yeah, that goes
So
both
you're
ways,
just
Democrats
picking
and
and choosing,
Republicans.
and you are banning Muslims.
That is no, because we're not. That goes both ways with Republicans and conservatives. Or I mean, Democrats and conservatives. Both of them are not going to do shit to Saudi Arabia. That's not going to happen.
I
So-
agree with you.
Right. So bringing that up and saying like, oh, well, you have to ban them. It's not going to happen. So that's just a moot
Shouldn't
point.
you?
I would like to see that happen, but it's
Okay.
not going to happen. So
All right.
it's a moot point.
Well, that's fine. No, I agree. It won't happen. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, if you want to talk about where Muslim extremists come from, Saudi Arabia and the UAE are your number 1 and 2 suspects. Right there.
The
More
government
than
has
Iran,
decided. Both sides
more
of the
than-
government have decided that the economic benefits outweigh the terrorism
So
threats.
what they're basically saying is, we don't actually care about your security. We care about the illusion of your security.
I don't see it that way either. I think that we do.
The
care
number
about-
1 and 2 people on the list of
Yeah.
sponsoring terrorism are left
They've
off
made-
our ban.
I understand. But they-
Okay, so then there's no security from those people.
No, that's totally different because, like I said, they've decided that the economic benefits outweigh the security measures. However, these countries aren't helping us. Iran has never helped us.
So essentially, Iran and Somalia,
Mm-hmm.
if you give us money, we don't care how dangerous you are to our people.
To an extent, I would say so. I think
Okay.
that the government would probably go along with that.
Okay,
if
so
that
then
was
they're
the thing.
picking and choosing what Muslims they leave off the list.
Because it's not Muslims, it's a travel ban. It's from this area.
Unless you're a
they're doing
Christian
it.
or a
Right.
Jew, I would assume.
Right.
I'm sure Israelis can. Well, Israel is
could
always
probably
going to
take
be
them-
on our list.
Right.
Like,
Well,
come
I'm sure
here
they
first.
can. The Israelis will probably take the Jews that are being persecuted. That's not probably going to be our issue.
Christians wrote a letter back to the Donald Trump administration and said, "Nah, we're cool."
Oh, yeah?
So
I don't think you got a leg to stand on it being a Muslim ban. There's so much evidence to the fact that there's a ton of Muslim countries that are not banned. We're looking at these countries because these are the countries that the government has said has ties. We've come to the agreement that Saudi Arabia is a moot point because of the economic factors.
No, we have not. It's not a moot point.
I think it's a moot point.
It is not. What we've come to the agreement on is that nothing will happen there.
Right.
That's not right. And Saudi Arabia, is a much bigger security risk to the United States than Iran
Doesn't that
is.
defeat your argument, though, by saying that, it's a Muslim ban, but these guys aren't included, therefore it's not a Muslim ban? Because then they would be excluded as well. If it was a purely Muslim ban, here are all the countries that would be excluded. They're not.
No.
Where's your argument?
Okay, what I'm saying, though, is so it's a poor Muslim ban?
No,
is that
it's
what
the-
it is?
I guess, yeah, if you
I
want to
mean,
look at it that way.
if you don't benefit my pocketbook, then
Yeah.
you're not allowed to come here.
I think you'll find
Yeah,
a life
that-
loss that usually
That's fine. That
is-
seems like a very Republican principle.
It's a Democratic principle too. There's no sides on this. If you give us money, we tend to go easy on you. That's the way it's always been. It's
That's
not.
not ethical at all. And especially when you're talking about a country that serves a bigger risk to us than any of the countries on that list. We
Right.
don't have a Syrian problem. We don't have a Somalian problem. We don't have an Iranian
And we don't have a
refugee
problem yet.
problem. Yeah, because we're doing a good job. So we don't need to be any more preventative than we already are because we're clearly doing a good job. While terrorism is on the rise in the
Mm-hmm.
world, it is not in the United States because obviously
Yeah.
our system works.
I don't have any problem with our government saying we want to take a look at it for a certain period of time. It's not like they said a full year. It's not like they said 2 years or 3 years. They said give us 90 days to look it over. That's 90 days. That's a month and
Look
a
it
half.
over.
Look it over.
Look it over.
Okay, then there you go.
No ban. Look it over. You don't need a ban to look it over.
You don't necessarily
All
need a
you're
ban to
doing
look
is
it over.
trying to play to your base, and that's where I have a problem with this. Is that it's not. It doesn't do anything for our security. It doesn't do anything whatsoever.
That's easy
you
to say
make
because
the
nothing has happened
arguments.
yet.
You make the arguments that. Why not be secure? Why not? Because it doesn't do anything. The number 1 and 2 sponsors of terrorism are still out there and still can get their
Right.
people in here. We're no less safer with this ban than we are without this ban.
That's not necessarily true. If something does happen, if there is a plan,
If
and
something
it gets
happens,
through,
it's going to be some douchebag in his basement in New Jersey that does it.
well,
It's
that's going
not
on a
gonna
different thing. That's
be-
going off homegrown terrorism, which is a different topic. That's
The-
not touched by this.
Right. The
And
only
you're
problem
not-
that
that's
we
not gonna stop
have
this.
in the United States, homegrown terrorism, is not touched by this.
Right. So far,
Give yourselves a pat on the back, Republicans. You essentially put up walls to make yourselves feel warm and fuzzy inside.
I
You
still don't see it
did
that way. I
nothing
think
for
that's
the security
a
of the United
short-sighted
States.
view of it. I think that there's enough turmoil in the world right now to say we need to take a step back and take a look at these because we're watching all of our allies go through these problems. I understand it's not a problem now, and it's real easy to throw around numbers that say 0 from the past 15 years. But in the end of the day, we need to stay safe and take a look at it. We're not saying this is writ law for the rest of time. We're saying 90 days and take a look at it.
But do you trust that it's a 90-day ban? Even
I don't know. I don't
put
know
it-
what they're going to find out.
I don't, because I don't trust.
I don't inherently trust them either.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't think that it's
I mean, I was pretty sure the phone lines in the White House were supposed to be back on like 2.5 weeks ago. For some reason, they're still
Right.
down. I don't trust the
well,
government.
it's hard
That's
to
a
run the
stupid
government
point.
whenever Democrats won't allow the government to start running itself.
You can't get your phone lines back on?
I don't know.
Is that your
I've never
argument?
tried doing
if
it.
Chuck Schumer wasn't crying all the time.
I don't know what they stop and what they don't. I'm just saying he's not getting any friends from the previous administration or from the Democrats in Congress
No,
to
you
get
gotta-
this up and running.
That's not how friendship works. You have to earn friendship, and all he has done.
I think Donald Trump's a
is-
pretty easy guy to be friends with.
He's only thrown stones.
Everyone, yeah, like I said, he always fights back against people who come at him. But I think it's well within knowledge that if you're nice to Donald Trump, he's nice to you. He goes overboard on being nice to you. So, like, maybe it's the Democrats' turn to put out an olive branch every now and again and see if something goes their way instead of just throwing a fit, getting upset,
I
and
will say,
stopping everything.
I will agree that like with some things, I think the Democrats need to just like loosen up a little bit. But I do think with this, I don't have a problem with this being opposed. I don't.
I don't necessarily have a problem with it being opposed.
Especially
I think that
since
they
I
should
know
have the
people,
chance.
I know people with travel visas, and they're affected right now by this. So
Yeah, you're always
yeah,
going to know someone. That doesn't mean anything.
right? So if yeah, it does though because
So if Brandon Connick personally knows someone, we have to not do it? Doesn't
no,
make any sense.
it's not about Brandon Condit, the person. It's about every single person out there that's listening to this knows somebody, that friend that you have that does have a visa that is a exchange student or whatever, right?
From Iran,
From China.
is China on the list?
No, China's not on the
So then
list. But
What's the issue?
shut up. We'll put a person from Iran there. In my case, it's China. We're not talking about Brandon Condit. We're talking about that student who's at UMSL or at
Yeah,
UC
and
Berkeley.
that really sucks, but that's the way that the world is right now. And I don't think that we can go. That's what the Obama administration loved doing. They'd pick one person out of the crowd and go, look at this little old lady. She gets punched in the tits every day, and that's real sad, and it's your fault. And then that's supposed to somehow negate the fact that we can make our own decisions.
So we
There's
live-
some people that are going to be affected by this.
So
yes.
we live in a town that has a pretty infamous company that comes out of it, Monsanto, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen the Monsanto campus. I have, because I work down by both of them.
I have a friend that works at Monsanto, so you can't say anything bad
Okay, is he white?
about it. He is.
He's like the only white guy that works there. So, and I'm not saying that Monsanto is a great company or anything like that. I'm not going to debate GMOs right now. But what I
Right.
will say is that scientists come from Egypt, come from Iran, come from Israel,
our-
come from these countries that are over there. We're stopping them too.
Well, do you know why they
So-
come, right? They come for our colleges.
Terrorism. Probably.
Then shut it down.
Yeah, probably
We will
terrorism.
shut that down. No, they come here for our colleges. And
And then
we
they
send
benefit the United States.
Them, no, because we send them out. We as soon
Have
as
you
they're
seen
there,
the
we kick 'em
Monsanto
out.
campus? We're not sending them all out. Like every
If
single
they get the
every
stay
single
and
piece of
whatnot.
corn that you've eaten in the last decade is thanks to an Iranian. so like you're pretending that they serve no benefit.
But you're also coming from the point of the argument that every Iranian is a fucking scientist.
No,
And
I'm
that's not the case.
I'm coming from the
we can
perspective.
get our own scientists. I guarantee you, we have people that are smart enough to make fucking corn for Monsanto in our own country. We don't need the Iranian
We
scientists.
benefit from foreigners being in our country, from those countries as well. So we are not just putting a stop to the scary,
Right.
non-existent terrorism problem that we
Yeah,
have.
obviously, we do benefit from people being in there. I don't think that it's 100%. Well, if we turned off the valve and no foreigners came in, that America would just crumble. No, I mean
No,
we have people here that can do the same things as well. It's just this guy's smart. He did well in the interview. We take him instead. So I don't think that it's saying, okay, well, now that we have a 90-day ban on Iran, our entire science infrastructure is going to crumble
No,
because
but that's
corn's not being made.
if you're taking it at face value and assuming that it will stay a 90-day ban. I don't assume
Right.
that it will stay a 90-day ban because
I don't know. With Bannon seemed like he wanted to do this.
Bannon
I would
seems like
see
the
that they would-
biggest a-hole in the history of the world. And, you know, I don't know. This is just a push for President Bannon's whole agenda. So, you
We'll
know,
see. Like I said, I think that there's a lot of with the way that the world is right now, it never stands to be too cautious. And preferably, I would like it if we would just go over there and work with Russia to take out the problem. I don't think that if ISIS was around, we wouldn't have this problem. There wouldn't be a ban. There wouldn't be anything.
I don't think there's going to be a ban. So
I think he'll reword it. I think that he's 100% going
and
to
then I
reword
think
that,
that
and it's
the
going to go right
states
through.
I think the states will continue to sue.
gotta
and
overturn it.
And then they will sue again, and then they can keep it held up in court. And as long as it's held up in court, eventually it'll have to go to the Supreme Court. And if they can get
There's
it there
a-
before Neil Gorsuch,
Yeah.
then it's over anyway.
There's a way to word it. Like if you can word it properly with the right fact, because all you need is one right fact that says this is what we've
It's
seen.
just astonishing that they don't have a fact.
Well, I think that
Don't have
the
a
fucking the
single
lawyers
reason.
shit the bed. Like they just apparently they didn't show up with their game face on, or I don't know. I didn't hear the transcripts of the court meeting. It could just be that those judges decided, and that's the real problem with right now is that it's so polarized.
Yeah.
People, especially Democrats, and for the past 8 years, especially Republicans, were just picking their party over their profession.
Yeah,
and
I
they were
agree.
just going, you know what, fuck it. I disagree with it. So instead of looking at the facts, I'm going to come in with a mindset that it's wrong. And now I'm just going to shut it down.
Yeah.
And
No,
that could
I-
very well have been what happened to the Ninth Circuit.
It could. Yeah, and I won't disagree with that. It
But to be
definitely-
fair, it did sound like the lawyers just did not do
Yeah,
a good
it-
job of making an argument.
It didn't sound good for the Trump administration. It seems
It's a
like,
hard argument to make, and even as I sit here trying to make it, because it hasn't happened yet.
Right.
There hasn't been a discernible event that we can all look
You're
at and
saying-
go, "Oh fuck, we should have stopped
because
that."
because the argument that your side is making is you might someday get into a car accident, so don't drive. And that's not reasonable.
No, we're doing the car warranty aspect, saying at some point we're going to get broken down, so let's just take care of it.
Right, but you and I, who have both sold car warranties, know that's a bullshit pitch.
99% of the time, but that 1%, they really, really like us.
Like,
They totally are on board.
wait, you don't have a receipt? We're not paying for anything. kidding.
1 mile over on that oil change.
There's
Go fuck
loopholes
yourself.
all around. No, we'll just keep the ban.
Yeah. There are. So, like I said, again, got to reiterate, I don't agree with the ban per se, but I do agree that
Which,
it's,
if you listen to like 10 minutes ago, I did get him to say that he does agree with the ban, and I did that on purpose.
I didn't know because I don't 100%. I agree with their right to do it. I think that the government has the ability to put in the ban in order, as long as it's for the 90-day period or whatever period they want to do, to review things. I think that's well within a government's right and an administration's right to make sure that
I think reviewing
it
things
meets their
is
standards.
absolutely within the right of the government. I
Right.
don't think you need a ban to do it.
I don't think you necessarily do, but I also don't feel that I'm in the position to know more than the generals and everyone else. That's
Donald
looking
Trump
at-
is.
Yeah, well, he is now because he's commander in chief, so he actually is in the position to know
I am
that.
too.
So,
So,
run for president, and then you can be the commander in chief.
I will not run for president. I have a Facebook and a MySpace account, so I will not. Like, I'm sure that hopefully that MySpace is like doesn't even exist anymore. But
I can't. I forgot my password, so I can't even get in to delete. The
so that means
horribleness
it's
that's
there, and
Oh, it's
somebody
there.
can pull it up. So I will not run. I will not run for office. I will just yell at people who do.
Right.
But
So again, we'll see.
yeah, I mean,
I think
that's fair.
I try to be. So I think that I think he's gonna reword it. I think that it's gonna, in some way, shape, or form, get through. But I do have to admit that I thought it wasn't gonna be this big of a deal to get it. I thought that he was pretty much standing on solid ground, and apparently not,
Yeah.
according to the Ninth Circuit Court. So
I didn't know.
so we'll see.
I didn't know if he was standing on solid ground. I'm glad to find out that he wasn't, because I don't think
That's
this
what 3
was,
people said. So
But
keep that in mind.
But we'll see. I mean, and the thing is, this will be up again. We'll be talking about this again, if not next week, the week after. So. So, I guess for the final little bit,
Speed round.
Yeah, we'll try to speed this one up since we went way too long on
yeah,
that.
we're at like an hour and some minutes.
Yeah,
so
this is going to be the longest episode ever,
Yep.
which they are increasingly are. But so
Every time.
so we'll get it right into this. A few other things that happened. Actually, we'll only talk about really like one other thing that's been going on this week, and then I want to finish this kind of on a different note than we normally do. But so first we'll talk about just the tactics of, and we touched on it earlier in the show, but the tactics of. We talked about the tactics of the Democrats in Congress and how they're trying to halt things. Now I want to talk about the tactics of the left as a base.
Right.
Because they seem to be organizing much like the Tea Party did. They're shutting Republican senators and Congress people down whenever they're
During
giving
town halls
and
and- yeah.
stuff. They're shouting at them. They're blocking Betsy DeVos from a school,
Yeah.
which like the last thing that needs to happen is for her to not have access to a school. Like she has no knowledge whatsoever about the
Right.
education system. Maybe get her in a school.
Let her sit in on a couple sessions.
Right. See how this whole thing works that we call public education.
Yeah, it's her job.
Um,
I got an issue with that just because I did not like Betsy DeVos at all.
no,
I don't-
I don't think most reasonable
Most people don't.
reasonable people don't.
Yeah. Well, at least the ones that I've come in contact with or seen online. So but I still do have a problem with them literally surrounding her. And the other thing about this is because the way that the left has done this, where there are so many protests, they just get up there and they try to block someone. It's so inclusive to rioting that at
Yeah.
any point it would not have been.
Well, and
I would
you-
not have.
You and I have been at protests before, and
Yeah.
you know people call it mob mentality, and
Right, I only
and
punched like
the-
12 people. You know.
Well,
No.
I'm not getting there yet, but I think mob mentality is sometimes used loosely, but
It's real, man.
Yeah, it is. And so we went through. A lot of people know the Westboro Baptist Church, the church of like 8 family members.
Hate gays and everyone else. They just basically hate everybody.
Yeah, they hate everybody, and they protest gay soldiers' funerals and
Right.
all this stuff. So anyway, they showed up at a local high school, a few years back.
What high school was it?
It was Fort Zumwalt East.
Okay.
They showed up, they were scheduled to show up there. They didn't actually show up because
East was before my days. That was West all the way.
I know, mine too. But anyway, so they scheduled a protest because I think I can't remember what the issue was. I think
They were
East
protesting something.
was
like,
doing like some type of LGBT inclusive club, like after
Yeah.
school, like
apparently that
prep
pissed
club
off
or
the
something
Westboro
like that.
Baptist Church enough to show up and be like,
Right.
"Oh."
So they decided they were going to schedule an appearance at East with all their nasty signs of all their hateful rhetoric and whatever. So a bunch of people, local people, including myself, showed up to the counter protests, which I felt good about. Like, I'm going to be on the opposite side of this hateful speech and whatnot. And while I do think that first of all, Westboro didn't even show up. So it was literally just a counter protest.
See, it worked.
So that was interesting, but it still made me feel good that people showed up for what I thought was the right reason.
Right.
And here's,
And I also would agree that is the right reason.
and I think mostly it is, but where mob mentality comes in to play, and this is a really, like, this, nobody fights, nothing happens bad at Fort Zumwalt East, so I don't want to allude to that, but what did happen, though, was a bunch of chants that had nothing at all to do with LGBT issues started
Right.
happening because kids started skipping class to hang out on the sidewalk outside of their school and started yelling "Free the whales" and do all this stuff. And you saw how fast it took, literally like 5 minutes, and the entire crowd went from standing together for a purpose to standing together to just stand together, and everybody's yelling their own
Right.
thing and everybody's laughing and
Laughing,
having a
ha,
good
ha, ha.
time. And that's a harmless
Right.
way that mom
Until the rage comes in
Right.
on whatever it is.
But so in that same respect, if you relate that to something that happened at Berkeley, or to relate that to something that happened in Washington D.C. on inauguration,
Or
which
very
we've
well
already
could have
talked about.
happened to Betsy DeVos when she showed
Yeah,
up.
absolutely. Because I think people sometimes show up for the right reasons, but because it's so easy to get off focus,
Right.
it turns into this mob thing. And so
it-
I think people need to be really careful.
Yeah.
And those
I think
Democrats
the left protests are, just like I said, way too inclusive to rioting. Even when it didn't used to happen, like you said back in the day. Like the Westboro Baptist Church is easily something that people could riot over nowadays.
Right.
But back in that day, it was a little bit different, and people were upset and everything. And I know the one thing that happened to the Westboro Baptist Church, they released all the names and the address, they doxed them and
Yeah,
all that.
yeah.
And I came out against that at the time as
You
well.
did, yes.
Because, like, they're still people. We can
Yeah.
disagree with them, and we don't like them. I don't want them to come around, but they can if they want. I'm just going to call you dumb.
Right.
That's what I do.
I agree with you.
So I didn't
on
like that. And like I said, too often now, whenever I'm looking at social media, when I look at NPR reporting on these things, it's just laden with people in support of other human beings being hurt
Yeah,
just because they
I
disagree
don't agree
with them.
that. I would be. I know you've now thrown NPR under the bus a couple of times.
Fuck
in
you,
the
NPR.
Last,
I don't like
in the
NPR.
last
So
2 weeks, but I don't think that NPR. I think NPR is. They definitely have they have an agenda. I don't think it's as big of an
Yeah.
agenda as conservatives would like to say.
a year
it
ago,
is.
I would agree with you. Not anymore. Not after this election. They chose their side. They made it very obvious.
Here's the thing. I don't think that you can stop what's going to happen on your comments page. Whether you're
Right.
whether you're NPR or the Devil's Advocate or Joe Schmo.
Yeah, and I'm
on
talking about
Facebook,
the mentality of just the left themselves. They're too inclusive to looking the other way whenever these riots and this violence happens.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of
And
that too. When I first saw what was happening in Berkeley, even my first thought was like, this is an interesting way to handle this. But I assumed that I would hate Milo Yiannopoulos, and I don't like Milo.
I agree with 50%, but I disagree.
And I wouldn't even say that I agree with that much. But what I would say is he has a right to say it, whether or not I
Yeah.
agree with it. And I'm not going to
He's not-
burn down the structure
Yeah.
that he's being housed in.
And a big thing has to do also with the way he's doing it. So he's not telling his people, go beat the shit out of all these guys that are
Right.
over here.
I will say, though, because I want, and this is dumb and I shouldn't even get into this, another tangent, just extending this show longer. But you said last week when we were talking about Berkeley that Milo does a lot of this as satire.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a fair assessment. I think that I think he uses wit but I don't think. But he is presenting himself as an intellectual who is giving you a reason to think this way. The difference between that and you bringing up Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert is they're presenting themselves as comedians making fun of something.
Yeah, just because they're
Milo
on
isn't
cartoon.
doing that.
Yeah, just because they're on Comedy Central, whatnot. But let's be
their
honest.
career path
one of the
is
big things-
comedian. They are
yeah.
stand-up comedians before they
But
had
we gotta
shows.
look at the facts. And even back in those days, whenever because I really didn't like Jon Stewart, The Daily Show, or the Colbert Report. I liked the Colbert Report a little bit more when it was going on. But even then, I would get upset because they were so one-sided. And whenever you look at the facts, there were young people saying, "This is where I get the majority of my news."
That's
and you're
because
clearly getting.
Here's
and
the
it's
thing,
bad
though.
on them
While
for doing
you're
that.
while you're spouting off about how CNN and
Mm-hmm.
NBC and CBS and Fox can't do their jobs, a lot of what comes from Jon Stewart's show back when it was a show was better reporting than or
They
or
would
was
skew
better. It was skewed. Everybody skewed, and theirs was
Right.
skewed more for a comedic take.
Well, it was more for a liberal take. With comedic properties to it, which in my case is why I relate it to what Milo does, because it is a conservative skew with elements of
Yeah,
comedy.
but Milo
in
is
it.
like Michael Moore, who
He's
is
not
trying
pretending to be-
He's presenting you facts as an intellectual who knows something, so you should learn something from him. That's not what Jon Stewart is doing.
I don't see the difference as much as you do, just because it's on Comedy Central, because it's saying it's a comedy
It has
show.
nothing to do
It's
with
a
what
comedy
network
news
you look
show.
at. You look at the
It's a news
content.
show.
Right? So it's making fun of stories in the news.
But it's still presenting to you with the facts and then just skewing it to be more on their side. And really what it did was it painted that if you thought conservative, you were to be laughed at. That's what I had an issue with. Is they just, he would just make stupid faces at the camera and be like, "Look how fucking stupid you are
But
if
I
you
think
this,"
I
not present
I
the
think
whole
you
evidence.
ignore all of the Democrats that got
That laughed a lot about it. Yay!
No, they got set on fire on Jon Stewart's show. They did. There were a lot
Well,
of
even Trevor
Democratic.
Noyer does that now. Like every now and again, I was watching during the election, and he would go at Hillary on the stuff that you should
Sounds like
clearly
you're only
go
watching
and hear.
every now and again, because if you
Yeah.
watched it on
well,
a
I
nightly
used to watch
basis,
it quite a bit back in the day.
you would
but
know then that Jon Stewart attacked Democrats not equally.
No.
But back in the day when you and I were watching it, was before Obama was in office, mostly.
Yeah, I did.
So you
for,
should
like,
be
the first-
attacking Republicans more. They're
Yeah.
in power.
Well, right. For the
Like,
first term of Obama, I was still watching, and,
So-
and like I said, now I watch Trevor Noyer sporadically if I
Yeah,
get
I
a
don't
chance to.
I'm not as into that version of the show. But either way, that was a side tangent. I want to point out that because I listened to the show back and was like, I don't agree with that. He's not a comedian, and so now I still don't
Some of his
think
speeches
that-
almost end up like
I s-
stand up. I mean, they're comedic in their presentation.
He's got wit, but that is not what that's not why you're there.
yeah, he still laughs about
You're
it.
not there to laugh.
Trust me, man.
You're
watch
at
his
the
speeches.
Daily Show to laugh.
Right. Well, you go to the speeches trust. There's
That's
a lot of
the
laughing going on.
yes.
So people are there. They realize that's part of the
I
the
agree
whole
that
thing,
he is
the whole
witty.
aesthetic.
What I don't agree with is the reason you're there, and that is where presenting Milo as satire, I think, is incorrect, because you don't show up to laugh. You show up to get informed. You
I don't
do
think so. I
show
think that
up.
they do show up to laugh. I don't think that as much they're showing up to be informed. I think it's the Milo. He's showing up and he's gonna be speaking.
I think people
and you
show up
you
for
laugh.
different reasons. I think too that it would be fair to say that racists show up to back themselves up.
Well, I would hope that there's not a lot of them. Richard Spencer. But,
Punch him in the face. I punch him week 2 right in a row.
I'll look to the other side on that one and be like, what?
What?
So.
We got called out on Facebook or YouTube about that. I don't care. I'll punch him again.
I
And I'll
really-
punch
yeah.
you too.
I can't get behind him, man. If you want to punch him, all right. Just don't send him floating down the river.
I'll punch the.
That's messed up.
I'll punch the commenter too. Call me out. Call Mitch out.
We'll call him out now.
No, but anyway, so I don't know. That kind of just wraps up the whole thing. You touched on a few things there, but I think
She
that
should be able to do her job, and
Betsy DeVos should be able to do her job. The Republicans,
anyone should be able to do their job, even if you disagree with it. And they need to just. I know they're
But
not
it
gonna,
does-
they're not going to. They're
it
not going to
does-
calm down because I say calm down.
It does make me a little bit nervous because I'm starting to doubt. I've said it earlier in the show. I've always thought that you were right, that this group of liberals that is really, really emboldened right now was the quiet or the vocal minority.
Yep.
but I wonder if they're the vocal majority. And if they are, then people like me need to just shut up. because
No, 'cause I think, like,
because the common goal that the reasonable left and the vocal crazy left have in common is we both don't want Donald Trump in 2020. And I think that the midterms will be a
One-term
good
president.
test. If the liberal movement is as united as it
Yeah, I
looks
think
right now,
we'll
then
see if it's solidified
the
or not.
midterm should flip.
Right.
So
I think that I wouldn't get too excited about it.
I
Just
don't-
like with Chuck Schumer, I think that he was all sad and defeated, and then the Women's March happened, and liberals decided we do have people that are actually on our side in numbers. I think that it still is the vocal minority, but we'll see. The midterms, I think, are a very good litmus test to see
right.
just how much
Yeah,
dissentiment, I suppose, is with the liberal side.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So we'll see how that goes.
Right on.
Um,
So let's move on to the.
The last little topic that's more of a fun, free thinking topic here. So
I hate that.
not so much. I mean, it relates a little bit to a story, but I'm gonna kind of take this into a couple areas, and I'm also going to credit the Dave Glover Show on 97.1 FM in St. Louis as they did have this. They brought this up earlier in the week, and I really found it intriguing, and I think you and I have personal experiences with it that we can talk about, and so kind of relate it to here. But so here's the thing. There's a story out of California this week or last week where 72-year-old couple have been married for 22 years, are currently, they've immediately separated, may or may not be getting a divorce. I think that's up in the air right now, because she is a self-described socialist and he voted for Donald Trump. And now, obviously, I don't know too many more details than that. So, like, maybe they were punching each other every day and, like, they really need a divorce. That's the best thing for
Right.
them. It's possible. But, so that story exists, that happened, and then there's another study that came out recently that says that 65% of people lost contact with friends and or family over the 2016 election. And so all of that, I think, is just an interesting little brain teaser, and how do you dissect all of that? So we'll start with the couple. Like, what do you think about the couple?
I don't think they're the only ones that's happened to during this election cycle.
I hope there's not too many divorces going
Oh,
on.
I'm sure there are, man. The
over
thing,
it.
yeah, this election was extremely divisive in every sense of the word.
It was.
And yeah, I mean, just I personally, maybe I didn't lose a friend. I don't know. We'll see. But I've definitely come into quite a few arguments online that got heated because
I think I've had arguments with that same friend.
I think so.
And it is unfortunate because the thing is that for me personally, I don't dislike that person. I do have a problem with tactics and information that have been used on their social media
as I
accounts.
did.
And so, yeah, I mean, I and what sucks is that, like, you know, sometimes you almost feel like a bully. Hashtag bully.
Hashtag bully, you
but-
fucking bully.
But the thing is, like, I think that
It's so easy to bully right now.
Well,
Like,
I think
everyone
that-
thinks they're right, you know?
I think bullying and correcting the falsities that your side is presenting are two different things. And I think that the person that is presenting false stuff,
It's on you. You're the one who needs to be correcting the story.
Right.
And
so I think that person can see what your correction as bullying, but I think that it's different from what bullying actually is. My intent in those situations, I'm sure your intent in those situations, is not to be a jerk to that person, but is to point out that, like, you're not being consistent and you're not being
And I've had
fair.
points where I couldn't take any more, like reading someone's comments or whatnot and being like, I'm not the bad guy. And I went to an irrational response.
Right.
And things
I've
have
done the
happened.
same thing.
And I know lots of people that the same thing has happened, like remove me and all that, and people are doing it. They're actually taking their friends off their Facebook feeds.
I will
and-
say, for the record, I will never delete you from
nope,
Facebook.
that ain't gonna happen.
Ever.
You have to
No-
shut me up
Right.
because I ain't gonna do it.
Yeah, you can delete me, but I'm not going to delete you because to me, a friendship isn't you don't lose a friendship over political views. We can fight.
Right.
You and I can fight.
Well, we almost
for months, and
for-
we have.
Yeah, very during this election, there was definitely a moment. It was after the cons, the whole thing with Donald Trump and whatnot, and
I think I called you a Nazi.
you did. You called me a Nazi. You called me up, and you came in hot, and I got hot quick too, and was
Yeah.
just like, nope, fuck that, and we got upset for a very long time.
Yeah,
there was a couple days where
We
we didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
And that's fucked up
too.
because we can call each other dickheads and fucking.
we do all kinds of stuff, and yeah, I mean,
We can
fight
hit it
with
all
you
the time,
on
but
a
it's gonna
nightly
be
basis
fine.
over the phone, and but I'm still like we're still
There's
very
something
good
about this
friends.
election that just it was
Well,
a
and I
step
think
too
what
far
it
for a
is,
lot of people.
If you try to like psychoanalyze it, I think what it is that a lot of people decided sometime in the last year and 3 quarters, since the 2016 election process started, that depending on who your support lay with, that said a lot about you as a person, or
Right.
said a lot about your character.
If you were on the other side, you couldn't possibly
You
be a
could-
good person.
Right.
It wasn't
you
even.
You can't even understand where I'm coming from because I can't fathom where you're
Right.
coming from. And I
In
think
many ways, that's why this show even exists. Because we're like-
right, yeah, it is because
Because we actually can. We can figure out where the other person's coming from.
and we don't have to agree with each other to move on and still not lose a relationship over that. I
right.
mean,
Especially a marriage. I couldn't even imagine being married to somebody
Yeah, that-
and being like, you know what? That's what did it. I would be way more pissed off about their dish habits or something. Not their fucking
Right.
presidential pick that comes
and
once every
what
4
you gotta
years.
think about too is like, did they just not talk about politics ever? Like, you would think that you would know if one side is a Trump supporter and one side is a
Yeah.
self-described socialist, like you'd think that they would have had some battles before
I
this.
can just imagine that. Like, she's a big socialist and whatnot. He just shows up with a Trump sign. What the fuck is this?
Right.
like,
Like he was
what the fuck is this?
Right. He literally came home with like a new garden hose, and she was supposed to have lamb chops on the dinner. She's like, I found this. You've
What
got
is this?
What is this red hat?
Just want to make America great, honey. Get the fuck out.
Right.
Like-
So yeah, it's just, but it just, and what's sad?
That's crazy.
What's sad is I believe it. Like I totally believe 65% of people.
And like I said, I don't think that's the only case. I'm sure there's multiple cases the same way across the country because it just went so far. Even myself arguing with family members where we've gotten
Yeah.
3 times as heated as me and you get.
Well, yeah. Well,
Like-
and I mean,
You're wrong.
I remember after the election, I did not vote for Hillary Clinton. No, put that out on the record.
Yeah, you
I
voted
did-
for yourself.
I voted for me and my penis.
You did. You were
Um,
playing pocket pool going into the ballot booth 4 more years.
right. I voted for me. And because the thing is, I didn't want to know 3 years from casting that vote
Right.
that I was responsible for whatever was going on. And that's
And
a
both
cop
sides
out.
were bad.
That's-
Well, both sides were bad. I
But-
never believed you either. I always thought you were voting for Hillary the whole time.
I know you did, and you told me that I was, and I was like, I really hope that he believes that I'm
I
not,
really did.
because I'm really not, and I didn't. But I was also very, very confident that Hillary Clinton was going to win. I
Right.
didn't see a possibility that Donald Trump could win, and I fell into the same trap that a lot of Democrats are still falling in, where it's
Or possibly
easier
Republicans.
It's easier to call the other side names and to just shut them down mentally and just black them out
Right.
than to accept that they could actually have a reason for feeling that way other than what I see.
Right.
My problem with
Or that
Donald
you could
Trump
be wrong. And I'll be the first one to say I could be fucking wrong
Right.
on a lot of things. I'm an asshole in a chair drinking beers.
Right.
I could be wrong on everything.
Yeah.
I don't know.
My reason for not liking Trump was because of the rhetoric. I didn't like his rhetoric. I don't think that that's I think that there's something to be said about how much class or prestige that office should hold. And so I was blindsided by this guy who is doing everything different. Like nothing is how I've
Right.
known politics for a long time, and nothing is happening the way it's supposed to. And I didn't understand it. I think I got hung up on things that I thought were racist, and I got hung up on things that I thought were fascist, and I got hung up on those things. So I called people who believed in him a fascist or a bigot
Right.
or a racist, and I think that's a disservice. I think that there's a lot of Democrats that are still doing that, but I think that's because you get so hung up on those qualities, or like you got hung up on the fact that Hillary Clinton is a cheater. She is
Right.
a liar. She is a dishonest person, and so it's
And
easy
that was me
to,
going into it saying, that's the office, that's the presidency of the United States. I don't want someone
It's-
that I know is corrupt getting in there.
Right, and it's easy for people on your side and people on my side to look at the other side and go, well, he must be a racist. Well, he must be a
Corrupt asshole
He
that-
must
yeah.
be corrupt and dishonest, and that's just simply not the case. And I think that I think because the politicians, both sides, all sides, made it so personal in the 2016 election that it really made us feel that we're picking a side, but there is a line in the sand in between the two sides. Like, you are clearly
Well, not Obama. We stick to our red lines in the sand.
you are clearly on one side or the other, and I think that kind of hurt us as a population. I know that after Donald Trump won the presidency, I remember sitting there, and still, as election night as it was closing down,
I was
like
drunk
2
as fuck
as-
till like 4 in the morning. It
at
was
two,
ridiculous.
At 2 in the morning, I was still thinking there's got to be more counties that haven't been counted. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's 3 o'clock on the East
hilariousness
Coast.
of the election, because I was coming into it and I was the Trump supporter that kept going with it. Like, I was like, he might win. And then the past couple of days, I was like, oh, well, I don't know.
Right.
And about 9 o'clock at night on election night, we called each other and was like, so there's no way Donald Trump can win, right?
Right.
And like,
Yeah, I mean,
called it.
Yeah,
Like, it was basically done.
and then
Florida happened.
yeah.
And after Florida, more just kept coming in. Ohio happened, and then when Pennsylvania happened, I was like, "Oh my fucking god!"
But I remember after the election, because that all played out at like 4 in the morning, and so we didn't talk right after the election. We talked the next day,
Right.
And I remember
After 9 o'clock, we didn't do anything else.
No, and I remember not wanting to answer the phone, because I was a jerk. I was like every other Democrat leading up to it, where I was yelling in my glass bubble and in
Right.
my echo chamber, and like I was a jerk.
Am I right? You're right. You're right.
You're stupid for voting for Trump, and you have no idea how bad you're gonna lose, and I'm gonna feel so great when this is over. And then I fell asleep in between when I thought it was over and when it actually ended, and the outcomes were very different when I woke up and was like, oh my god, what happened? This is over. But I didn't want to talk to you for a couple days because I was afraid to talk to you.
Oh, I was
I've
gloating.
been such an ass for like
And I wasn't letting you forget it, man. I was gloating my ass off. I was like, "What's up?"
so, but
Brandon's face on November 8th. Oh.
but the thing that I do think is good about what we were able to do, and I hope more people were like us, that we don't have to agree with each other. We can give each other crap. We can fundamentally disagree with aspects of each other's views, but that should not end our friendships or our relationships.
Right.
It's just that to me
And
is
you-
mind-boggling.
Right.
So,
You just gotta try to be humble and realize you might be wrong. They're
Yeah.
not necessarily wrong just because they're not saying the same thing as you.
right.
And that's
And
huge,
you'll
'cause both
find
sides do that.
I think most reasonable people will find that the truth of what's right and wrong falls somewhere in between extreme left and extreme right. Like
Right.
there's going to be a-holes shouting on both sides of the aisle, and those loudest people are probably the people that represent the fewest people.
Right.
We'll see based on the midterms if that's
That's
true.
what it's all going to come down to, at
Yeah.
least for. And that's fucked because it's like 2 years away.
Right.
We got like a year until
Yeah.
campaign cycle starts going
Yeah,
on.
so
That's going
we
to be
can-
pretty awesome.
I mean, it'll definitely be, man, this will be an interesting show during the next election process.
Yep.
So, all right. So I think that's
that
it
wraps
for,
it.
Yeah. Don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe for all of our latest content.
Links to the topics discussed are going to be listed down below. Be sure to comment and let us know just how wrong you think we are.
We will respond.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
And now we leave you with your alternative fact of the week. Loretta Scott King, the widow of Martin Luther King. Loretta Scott King.
On this Martin Luther King Jr. Day, audio of his late wife, Coretta Scott King.